Last time I'm going to do that. Planning Commission meeting of January 19th, 2022 will come to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Welcome. The Secretary will call roll.
Commissioner Hodge.
Here.
Commissioner Rice.
Here.
Commissioner Gray.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Tolson.
Here.
Chairperson Mann.
Here. First order of business, election of officers. Deputy Environmental Service Director Sean Gibson will now read his own script.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission and members of the public. This is a time and place set for the nomination and election of Planning Commission Chairperson and Vice Chairperson for the 2022 calendar year. The Simi Valley Municipal Code provides that prior to any vote for the office of Chairperson, the Deputy Director City Planner must take all nominations for the office. All nominations must receive a second. Anyone receiving a nomination may vote for themselves. The floor is now open for nominations for the office of Chairperson.
Nominate Commissioner Tolson.
Okay, we have a nomination for Chairperson Tolson. Any other nominations?
Do you want a second for the nomination?
I'll
first?
second the nomination.
Okay, second by Rice.
Now you can go back to you.
Any other nominations? Okay, hearing none, we can take a vote on that motion.
Commissioner Gray, what's your vote?
Yes.
And the motion passes unanimously. And before we switch seats, Chairman Tolson will open the floor for nominations for office of Vice Chairperson.
We open the floor for nominations for Vice Chair.
Nominate Commissioner Rice.
Second.
Motion second for Commissioner Rice. Any other nominations? Okay, hearing none, if we could have the recording secretary poll the commission on their vote for the office of Chairperson,
Vice Chair.
Vice Chairperson.
Commissioner Gray.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, congratulations, Chairperson Tolson and Vice Chair Rice. Now would be the time to switch nameplates and seats to resume the meeting. Thank you very much.
You want to stay there? I'll go where John is. Or you want to move?
Yeah, that would be appropriate, since you'll be right here. Okay. Now's the chance to move, though.
I know, it's all right. You're not that bad.
Well fought.
Thank you. All right. Is this me? May I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
A motion was made by Vice Chairperson Rice, a second by Commissioner Hodge. Unless there are any objections, the agenda stands approved. May I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
A motion was made by Commissioner Mann and a second by Commissioner Gray. Unless there are any objections, the minutes are approved. The secretary will read the declaration of conflict.
If any member of the Planning Commission may have a conflict of interest or any reason why that member must abstain from consideration of any matter on this agenda, he or she should so declare at this time.
Are there any declarations of conflict? Okay. This is the time allotted for public statements or comments on all items other than public hearing items. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to be heard? Okay. And do any members of the public wish to make a public statement via Zoom?
Go ahead and read those.
If so, please raise your hand function on your computer or *9 on your phone. Staff will unmute you when it is your turn.
Good evening, Pedro Toscano. You are unmuted.
Hello.
Pedro, you've got the floor.
Hi. Good evening. I'm sorry. I'm not even sure. I just logged in. I'm not sure if we're on the subject that I wanted to speak about, and that was the housing.
The Santa Susana
With,
project, that'll be down,
Yes.
down on the agenda, so unraise your hand, we'll call you later.
Thank you very much.
We have no further speakers at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Is there any correspondence from the Deputy Director, City Planner?
Yes, Chairman Tolson, we received, we provide you 3 supplemental staff reports, one regarding item 11A and 2 supplemental reports regarding item 13A1 regarding the public hearing. For 11A, that's updated report, and 13A1 are basically correspondence related to tonight's item.
Perfect, thank you very much. May I have a motion for approval of the consent calendar?
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
A motion was made by Vice Chairperson Rice and a second by Commissioner Gray. Unless there are objections, the consent calendar stands approved. There's no continued business, so we are here for public hearings. This or new business?
So we're going to go to new business.
Yeah. So we're here for new business. Can we have a report? Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay. This is the time and place set for a public hearing on the consideration of PD-S 2021-005, TP-S 2021-001, and the project's mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring plan therefore. Are there any ex parte communications to report? I guess there's none. May we have an oral report on this matter by staff?
Yes, good evening, Chairman Tolson, members of the Planning Commission. This is the Santa Susana mixed-use project being presented tonight. Before we get into our presentation from Principal Planner Claudia Pedroso, our Environmental Services Director, Stratus Paris, would like to make a few comments regarding the project. Mr. Paris?
Thank you, Sean. Good evening, Chairman Tolson. Welcome aboard, and commissioners. Last time I was speaking before you was when we were discussing our housing element update. And during that housing element update process, we had about a half a dozen public workshops with the community before the Planning Commission and also in front of the City Council. And there were several themes that we discussed during those hearings. It was finding ways to account for the next wave of housing growth in Simi Valley and finding the appropriate locations to do it. So during that housing element update, we looked at our underperforming commercial shopping centers as being a potential location to accommodate new housing growth and development. We also looked at areas for workforce housing. We also were discussing putting housing near transit along arterial streets, near shopping and other areas with amenities, and also to preserving vital components of our economy and trying to bolster that. And so that's kind of what some of those themes you'll be seeing in tonight's project. We've been working with the applicant probably as far as discussing this project for 4 years. The project was submitted last August, and 5 months later, we're here tonight. And also in the spirit of the housing element, this project also illustrates some of the more work that we have to do. We talked about it those nights about doing an inclusionary housing ordinance, which we haven't yet done, but that theme will come up tonight, as well as improving our mixed-use development standards when we do a zoning code update, and you'll see that theme being played out here tonight. The project before you tonight is not the first version. It's an evolution. When we first met with the applicant, this project was actually smaller, and through working with the applicant, we found ways to refine the project scope and development and ways to provide additional housing units on there. So I think it was as low as 240, and tonight we're looking at about 280 units. Also, when this project first started, it did not have an affordability component, and that was added through working with staff and dealing with some of the code issues with the project. And I know some of the comments we've received in your supplemental correspondence had questions about the affordability, maybe why there wasn't more, but the project does meet all the affordability requirements as outlined in our code, and we're grateful for the very low income category that they're incorporating in their project tonight. And also, the project was originally just with the applicant, and over time, they brought in a partner, USA Properties Fund. If you're familiar with USA Properties, they're the projects on Sycamore, the old Park District headquarters site, where they're doing the 99 senior apartments and the 212 market rate apartments. And they have partnered with this applicant tonight. And we feel that the Santa Susana folks plus USA will make a very strong team to ensure not this project just gets entitled, but actually built, operated, and managed in a very responsible way, as USA does some very top work around here in the city. So with that, I'll turn it over to our principal planner, Claudia Perdoso, to begin with the presentation.
Good evening. First of all, can everybody see my screen, or do I probably need to share the screen? And it's actually this one. Thank you for bearing with me. Good evening, and congratulations, Chairperson Tolson and Vice Chair Rice, and good evening to the rest of the planning commissioners. The project in front of you is provided by the applicant, the Garrity Group, and is proposing a redevelopment of the Santa Susana Plaza, which will include maintaining the southerly portion of the shopping center and the construction of a mixed-use project consisting of 280 units, apartment units, with 14 affordable units, about 5,000 square feet of retail, the subdivision of the project set into 3 parcels, and also adoption of the project's mitigating negative declaration and mitigation monitoring plan. The Planning Commission's action today will involve in making a recommendation to the City Council, who will then make the final decision on the project. The project site is located on Tapo Street and is bordered to the north by Cochran Street, the alleyway and Workman Avenue to the east, and Alpine Street to the south. The property is zoned commercial plan development with a mixed-use overlay and is also within the Tapo Street District Overlay Zone. This site is located in the Area D of the Tapo District Overlay Zone. Approximately 60,000 square feet on the northerly portion of the shopping center will be demolished to construct a new mixed-use project. Although some stores remain in the shopping center, the majority of the northerly portion of the center has been vacant for a few years. Some of the existing stores will be relocated within the redeveloped shopping center, while some had previously decided to leave before this project came to fruition. This view is from the alleyway to the east of the shopping center with the residential duplexes on the east side, and these duplexes, they actually face Workman Avenue. The existing power lines will be undergrounded, and portions of the existing wall that are not 6 feet will be 6 feet high will be modified to meet that requirement. So that's an advantage that they're providing for this with this project, is the undergrounding of these lines and fixing the wall. The 147,587 square feet shopping center will be partially redeveloped. Like I mentioned, approximately 60,000 square feet of the building will be demolished to allow for the construction of a 307,588 square foot, 4-story apartment building that will contain 280 units and also about 4,750 square feet of new commercial space. The mixture of units include 10 live-work units, 42 studios, 165 one-bedroom units, and 63 two-bedroom units. The project also includes 14 affordable units for the qualified very low-income residents. The studios are about 500 square feet. The one-bedrooms units are about 700 square feet. The two bedrooms are about 1,100 square feet. And the live-work units are about 1,200 feet together, combining the bedroom area and the commercial area. The site plan shows the project circulation as well as some of the amenities that are provided for at the ground level. The project consists of 2 buildings dissected by the access drive that runs north-south to the parking. It runs north-south to the parking structure. Parking for this project includes a parking structure that is interior to the project and to the building and contains 405 parking spaces. There are also 27 surface parking spaces that are in the neighborhood of this project. 487 parking spaces will remain to serve the rest of the shopping center. And so these are in addition to the parking that is provided for this project. The purple areas shown over here are some of the common areas that are provided for the residents, which include a fitness center, some creative office space, game rooms. They also have a conference room, and they have different lounge areas for the use of the residents. The project also provides a storage lockers rooms that are basically used for storage as well as bike parking throughout the different floors of the building. This conceptual landscape plan shows the other common gathering areas that are provided for and be able to use by the residents, which includes the pool area, barbecue area, outdoor lounge areas. They also have a recreation court, they have a relaxation garden, they also have a dog run, and in addition, they are providing this private park that is a part of the public open space requirement and will be available to use by the residents as well as other patrons. These renderings give you a feel for what those areas may be like, including like the dog run, the recreation area with some active play areas, as well as the areas where you can relax and just hang out with the family or friends. The project's building design follows a contemporary Spanish architectural design and includes sand-finished painted stucco in white and beige colors, recessed windows, wood trellises, wrought iron railings at balconies, metal awnings, deep overhangs, flat roofs, tower elements with slope tile roofs, and the like. The Tapo street elevation will provide a street dedication which will allow for additional landscaping for the live work units, the common creative, and also the common creative office space, and also for resident use. This view correlates the building with the proposed park. The management offices can be entered through the lowest floor. As you can see over here, the second and third floor provide ample articulation by cantilevering the balconies over the first floor, thus providing natural shading. In contrast, the fourth floor has been recessed back so as to keep the appearance of a three-story building. The fourth floor windows are provided with metal awnings for shade and articulation. The east side elevation includes deep building recesses in between some of the buildings and a 10-foot wide landscaping strip with trees that will help provide privacy for both the residents on Workman Avenue and the project's residents. As seen on this elevation, three-story elements are being kept at the perimeter of the building, with the fourth floor being set back to allow for a three-story pedestrian field. However, this elevation is not representative of a four-sided architecture when compared to the Tapo street elevation. This partial north elevation at the bottom shows the use of different colors, balconies, and roof materials, as well as the entrance to the parking structure, which is here in this location. However, in comparison to the partial Tapo street elevation, it does lack some of the detailing that has been provided on the Tapo street side, as far as the trellises and some other roofs and other materials and articulation. Likewise, on the east elevation, the east elevation does not possess the level of detail of the Tapo street elevation either. Suggestions include the provision of additional awnings, trellises, and more pronounced articulation. A condition to the planned development permit could be added if the Planning Commission finds merit to this concern. The general plan land use designation for this site is mixed use within the Tapo Street corridor. The Santa Susana Plaza Shopping Center was identified as an opportunity area and a potential site for redevelopment, as this center has suffered economically due to the loss of its vitality. The mixed-use land use designation provides an opportunity to revitalize the shopping center as well as the Tapo Street corridor, while providing much-needed rental housing units. The residential density in this district may range from 20.1 to 35 units per acre, and the project provides a density of 20.17 units per acre. As mentioned before, the zoning for the project is commercial plan development, Tapo area, and mixed-use overlay district. Because the project is in a commercial zone, no setbacks are required. The mixed-use overlay zone allows for a maximum height of 55 feet, requires separate parking facilities for residential and commercial uses, and also requires for the parking structures not to be seen from the public streets. All of these items have been accomplished by the project. And although the project complies with most code requirements with the provision of affordable units, the project is allowed to have a density bonus, incentives, and waivers, and qualifies for parking requirements per the density bonus law. The applicant is not requesting a density bonus. However, they are requesting 1 incentive and 6 waivers. Exhibit 7 in your packet explains in detail the applicant's request for incentives and waivers. It should be noted that the Affordable Housing Subcommittee will review the applicant's request, and the City Council will make the final determination and decision on those waivers. The incentive requested is to allow the 4-story for this project. As seen on this partial building section, the first 2 floors are stacked over each other, and the 3rd floor is recessed back 7 feet, with the 4th floor having a rooftop terrace and the actual building recessed back an additional 14 to 16 feet from the face of the 3rd floor, thus giving you the appearance of a 3-story building from a pedestrian scale at street level. A sample of the units are shown on this map, and this is in regards to the waiver request of the reduced private open space. So some of these units exceed the minimum requirement of 100 square feet per unit, while a few exceed that requirement. Some are less and some have more. Overall, this waiver will reduce a total of 28,000 square foot of private open space that will be required for all of the 180 units together, down to 17,360 square feet. When assuming a size, a 734 square foot unit size, that kind of equals to the potential loss of 14 units. And as you can see in this plan over here, the white areas represent some of those patios. And like I mentioned, some of them have a larger than 100 square feet per unit, and some of them are less than 100 square feet per unit. The second waiver they're requesting is to reduce the storage area requirement. Right now, the requirement is to provide 1 outside lockable storage area per unit. However, the code does not specify the size of that lockable storage area. At this time, the applicant is providing 172 units instead of 280. When you equate that in square footage and considering or assuming a unit size of 734 square feet, by the provision of the additional storage units will potentially be a loss of 7 units for the project. The third waiver request is to reduce the bike storage area. The applicant is proposing to actually use the same lockable storage area to be also the bicycle storage area. In this particular case, we are dealing with the same situation of where 280 lockable bicycle parking area will be required, and then only 172 will be provided. Which also, that would, if we were to require the 280 units, it will be a potential loss of 7 units. It should be mentioned that both that this bike storage area and the storage area are located in different areas in the parking lot, as well as some parts throughout the building floors, and then are located in different floors throughout the project. The other waiver request they're asking is for to reduce the drive aisle width for the one-way drive aisle. This is the entry to the parking structure, and the requirement would be about 12 feet minimum width for each one-way area. And they are providing 11 foot 6 inches instead. But each one-way aisle is being separated by a 2-foot wide island that contains the key car access to the residence. The size of each drive aisle are limited by the proposed columns that will provide major support for the structure. Those impedes the drive aisles to gain the additional 6 inches on each side. However, having this middle 2-foot aisle would provide additional opportunity to separate the vehicles going in each way, and thus staff feels that this will be acceptable. This waiver request is regarding the reduction size of 37 parking spaces. So in this particular case, the code requires for the ramp main access to go up and down a parking structure to be 25 feet. And also we require for the drive aisle, a two-way drive aisle to be 25 feet, thus reducing these parking spaces over here to be, instead of 9 by 18, 9 feet wide by 18 feet long, down to 9 feet wide by 15 feet long. And this only happens in 37 spaces, as this is also happens at each floor of the parking structure. Since the residential portion of the project has a surplus of 74 parking spaces, these spaces do not need to be assigned to any particular unit. It can be used as additional tenant or visitor parking. Therefore, staff seems that this request is reasonable. The sixth waiver request has to do with the relief from the location/distance from parking spaces to the residences. For multifamily projects, the code requires that parking is located within 200 feet of the residential unit. The blue arrows show the access points from the parking structure to the apartment, and it is pretty typical for each floor, as this repeats in floors going up. Being that the parking is located within a parking structure, it will be impossible to meet the 200 feet distance requirement. Hence, the applicant is therefore requesting release from this requirement. Overall, staff supports these waivers as they don't have an adverse impact upon public health and safety. The project site is proposed to be subdivided into 3 parcels. Parcel 1 will be about 0.69 acres and contains a Taco Bell restaurant. Parcel 2 will be 5.33 acres, and it contains the area where the proposed project was going to be built. And parcel 3 will be the remainder of the site of 8.55 acres and also will include the driveway on the east side that connects down to Cochrane Street. Approval of the parcel map application includes a condition to submit a maintenance agreement and CC&Rs for the reciprocal access and maintenance of the common areas. The Executive Board of the Neighborhood Councils number 1 and number 2 heard the project in December 9 and also December 14, 2021, and recommended, Neighborhood Council number 1 recommended approval by a vote of 8-2 with no audience vote, while Neighborhood Council number 2 recommended approval by a vote of 8-0, and the audience recommended approval by a vote of 3-0 on the project. An initial study was prepared for the project in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, and based on the conclusions of the initial study, it was determined that the project would not have any potentially significant environmental impacts. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of PD-S-2021-0005 and TP-S-2021-001 and adopt the project mitigating negative declaration and mitigation monitoring plan. This concludes my presentation, and staff is available for questions. And here we have Mr. Justin Ling as traffic engineer, and we also have Brent Zimmer from Public Works, Mary Malch also from Environmental Services, and we're here present for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Fantastic presentation. Let's start with commissioners' questions of staff. Vice Chairperson Rice.
Ms. Federoso, if you could just bear with me just for a minute. Just a number of questions, and some of these questions I'm sure the applicant will get to, but I'd like to kind of throw them out there now. Some of these questions I believe I know the answer to, but I just want a clarification. So the first question I have is, who put the sign on Tapo Street? That's the applicant, is that correct?
That is correct. The
Okay,
applicant put
I
the sign.
just, because it's a weird location on the street, and I drove by it a bunch of times before I actually saw the sign. I just thought that was a little odd. So going back to the parking spot, the applicant's asking for a waiver of the 200-foot. Do we know, kind of a guesstimate how far more than 200 feet someone might have to walk to get to a parking space, generally?
I don't have the exact dimension on this plan. I can find that out for you probably in a short moment. but technically that requirement was more intended to multifamily projects that are more like townhome projects.
Okay, all right.
So therefore, you didn't want, you had the ability to park in front of or very close to your unit,
Yeah.
but that doesn't really apply to this because no matter what, 200 feet is, if you get to the last unit over here, it's going to be more than 200 feet. So
Well,
that's
yeah,
the
I mean,
reason, yeah.
like, obviously, some of them are very close to they're going to be right there. But the
Yes.
ones on the outside or the ones in the very front, they're going to be quite a ways away. So I'm just, if we know the distance, that's what I was looking for that.
If I can get back to you on that,
Okay,
I'll find out.
that would be fine, or maybe the applicant has the answer and we get to the applicant, that's
Thank you.
fine too. Even though I believe I have the answer to this, very low income person would make approximately $22 an hour. Does that sound close to correct?
I do not have that information handy. I know there's based on the median income of in the Ventura County. And I'm going to have to get back to you on that as well.
Okay, that's fine, because I did just want to make sure that people know that very low income, what that threshold actually is. I had a question about stormwater capture, but if my math is correct, I don't have a question about stormwater capture. So, are there any electric car plug-in spots?
The building code will require them to provide some. Right now, it's not shown, but they will be
Okay.
required to provide some.
All right, excellent. Okay, any rideshare parking?
That is a concept that we did discuss with the applicant, and we can definitely go through the plan check process that we allow some of those spaces to be open and reserved for
I was curious
rideshare.
because the project over on Patricia, I believe it was, they had those, and I thought that was an interesting thing. The appliances, and especially since one of the partners with the applicant, the appliances in the apartments, are they all electric or are they gas and electric? Because I know that other project was all electric.
I would defer to the applicant on that one.
Okay, that's fine. The landscape buffer on Tapo, that's increased from what it currently is that correct? Where the wall is to the street? It says it's 12 feet, or will be 12 feet?
It will be 12 feet, 12 to 14 feet.
12 to 14
I
feet.
took the more restrictive dimension, and technically the setback requirement is 0.
Correct.
We just
correct.
asked them to provide more.
And
so-
and the applicant was going to replace some of the concrete, or the sidewalk, is that correct? I
Yeah.
thought I saw that in there.
There's a condition for
And
them to
my
improve that.
question about that is did the city or the applicant ever discuss the possibility of, and I know there's not a ton of room there, but maybe making the sidewalk meander a little bit?
I think I could defer that to Public Works. Mr. Link, would you have any information on that?
To my knowledge, we do not have a requirement for meandering sidewalk
Well,
on Chapel Street.
Well, I knew it wasn't a requirement necessarily, but I was just wondering if it would ever been discussed.
It was not discussed on the traffic
Okay.
end, no.
All right, that was my question. Okay. The metal fence on the north side of in fact, the metal fence is pretty much 6 foot around the project. Is that correct? I know I believe on the north side it said that it was 6 foot. I just want
Are you talking about the proposed one?
the proposed, yeah,
Yes.
below the Taco Bell. Okay. And the other one is and this one I'm pretty sure I know the answer to because I'm going ahead of the development codes here. So, but the development codes obviously haven't kept up with the new laws that have been passed since the beginning of the year. But does this site collect green waste? I know that they probably collect recycles and solid waste, but do they collect green waste now that we're supposed to throw our kitchen trash in the...
That's actually a very interesting point. We have been talking about that, the new requirements for green waste collection. And the applicant will be required to get approval by the trash hauler. And at that point, they're probably going to be dealing with the latest requirements at the time.
Okay. There were the questions about the east side, especially the southern eastern side of the building, that elevation. I know those are by the meditation garden and the, for lack of a better, the recreation garden or whatever. There's the two parts of the building that come out that are so much different than the others. They're kind of bland, for lack of a better word. I know that it says in here that staff talked about balconies or something to kind of break it up. They talk about decorative tile or different paint schemes or something like that to break it up besides just, is that
Yeah.
something that,
Yes, we actually had numerous conversations with the applicant, and the applicant felt that what they presented was appropriate. Hence, we left it to the planning commission's discretion if they wanted to add a condition or not, and maybe the applicant can express a
okay,
little bit more.
I'll wait for the applicant, and that's fine. Thank you. Okay, next one is this. The height of this building is quite a bit higher than the one that's there. And in order to figure this out, I had to use geometry, and that was not my best subject in high school. So would the height of this project preclude the homes on Workman from getting solar? And I know that if they had solar and we were interfering, that could be a problem, but I don't know that.
Are you referring to solar panels?
Solar panels, yeah, photovoltaic cells.
Photovoltaics, okay, so they are facing west and the roofs will be facing south, so that they shouldn't
Well, on
affect.
Kelsey Street, there are photovoltaics that face directly towards this project. The ones on Workman, the one that I know on Workman faces south. I don't know that that would be impacted unless it was,
So usually you want to put your photovoltaics on the west side and the north side, and then the south side.
correct.
So the south side is these are gables, so the south side should not be affected. And it appears that you have gables in the back and potentially a small portion facing west, but I wouldn't be able to tell you that unless they do the photovoltaic analysis.
I just am kind of concerned. And it's only a couple people who have those solar panels in that neighborhood right now, but I am concerned about them all of a sudden losing, and I don't know how long what we're talking about time-wise and how much electricity they would lose in that amount of time or anything, so I don't know, but I wondered if anybody had looked at that.
We can probably ask the applicant. I could tell you that from the face of the duplex buildings to the face of the building is at least 47 feet
Yeah,
distance. So
that's where I tried using my geometry and it came up
Yeah.
with really wacky numbers, so.
yeah, it depends on the azimuths and all kinds of stuff.
Okay,
So it's not just
right.
a straight
And the
answer.
time of year and the sun and all that.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay, so another question I have for you is elevators. On one of the maps, it shows the word elevator, but on most of them, it doesn't. I just wanted clarification on the location of the elevators. It looks like there's one in the northeast side of the parking structure.
Yeah, they have elevators in different areas. They have elevators
I just
here.
didn't see the word
ele-
elevator used except on
Is-
one of the maps, and I was a little confused by that, so.
Yeah, and you know what? The applicant probably will be able to point them out
Oh, that's
more
fine.
specifically
Sure.
because these are very more of a presentation drawings, so the text may not come through, but I know there's elevator, basically it appears to mostly each corner of the building and parking structure.
Okay. All right. So, and this is a question about the density bonus.
Mhm.
I'm trying to understand this. So, under current law, they can have this density because we're adding in parcel 3, right?
Oh,
So-
I see.
So
Yes.
together, because the two go together, they can have this density that they have, so they can have 280 units.
Yes, so the way that the state law reads, and I'm trying to get to that map over here.
It's okay. That's not actually, my question to you is this, is that I understand that part, but does that mean that if, let's say, next year, somebody decided to develop parcel 3 that they couldn't because that would change the whole density of the whole?
No, they still can because the density is at 20.17, which is the lowest end of the density. They can go up to 35 units per
Okay.
acre.
So in other words, on parcel 3, they wouldn't be able to have the same density as they have on parcel 2.
They potentially could, because it depends many things, and maybe our legal counsel over here can probably help me out on this. But my understanding is that depending on how much affordability you provide, is how much percentage you can actually
Right.
provide of density bonus. In addition to it, is that we're also looking at that this whole area, the the parcel 2 and 3, those are zoned, are the density for this one will be for the very high, which is between 20 and 35. That's not counting the additional density bonus they can get
Oh, I see what you're
beyond
saying.
that.
Okay.
So basically, if with the two of them, the 280 units account for 200. I mean, the 280 units account for the 20 units per acre. You can put easily another 280 unit apartment complex on the parcel 3 and still work out.
Right. Okay.
Unless you want to correct anything that I just said.
No, I agree. The density would be subject to state law and the municipal code. As the planner said, potentially someone could come in and get another density bonus on this parcel 3,
Right.
which will allow for density that exceeds the underlying zoning.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Almost. Do we know the apartment vacancy rate in the city, or approximately?
I am not sure of the vacancy rate, but I can find that out as well. And I
Okay.
still have answers to your other questions.
Okay, that's my last question for now.
Okay, so let
But
me
thank
answer.
you, you've been very
Let me
patient.
answer the other two.
Sure.
One, the maximum distance
Yeah.
from parking a structural entry to a unit is 500 feet.
Okay.
And the very low income is equals to about $18.87
1887.
an hour.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And then I owe you that one on the vacancy rate.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Hodge.
Yes, thank you. I have a couple of questions as well. I'm going to try not to duplicate anything that Commissioner Rice had brought up, but I do want to circle back on one specific issue with respect to density. The density in this area, as you've already shared with us, is generally speaking, without a density bonus, 35, correct?
Without density bonus,
Without a density bonus, it's typically the maximum density for this zone is 35 units per acre.
correct.
And the project, the building is being built on parcel 2, correct?
Correct.
And that is 5.33 acres.
Yes.
And there is a total of 280 units. And I'm sure Commissioner Rice, this wasn't geometry, so it wasn't a problem for him.
Algebra.
Did the math, and you come to about 52 units per acre and change,
Yes.
correct?
Uh-huh.
But we're only looking at, we're deciding that it's 20 units per acre because we're adding in the 8 point whatever acres for the existing project on parcel 3. Is that
Correct.
right?
And state law allows you to do that. State law allows you to use the property adjacent to it to calculate your density, as long as all the units are in the one property.
All right, I'm a little confused about in the one property. So we have 3 parcels. Those parcels can be sold independently, correct?
Yes.
All right. So it's not like they're all one parcel, and if you sell any part of it, you have to either redraw the lines to create a second parcel that you could sell, or you have to sell the whole shoot and match, right?
You can have it separately, or you can have it together. In this particular case, if you take the whole site, it will be less than 20 units per acre.
So you're sharing, and I'm not questioning this, and so if I sound earnest about this, it's just because I have a lot of questions and I want to get to all the other speakers. So the rules provide that if the parcel next door, does it have to be owned by the same applicant?
Do they have to be owned by the same applicant, Ms. Burris? I
Have to
didn't
be.
believe that you have to be owned by the same applicant to account for the density.
I'm sorry.
I thought so, but let me double check that before.
Well, it makes. I won't say that that's the rule because it doesn't make any sense. Because this is, look. I took a look at the government code section that all of this applies to. It was 20 pages in length with a 4 font. I mean, and it's long. It's awful. It's very difficult to understand, and of course it cross-references various other government code provisions, which are also 18 and 20 pages in length with a 4 font. So, I get that it's a big giant Rubik's Cube and it's kind of hard to keep in one piece in your head. I couldn't find that answer. So I'm relying upon staff to share that it is required to be the same owner. I'm hopeful that we can get that answer tonight. But going back to Commissioner Rice's question, if you're looking at 52 units per acre, and that's in excess, that's in excess of a bonus, even if the way I read, and of course I left it in my briefcase at home, the government code section that provides for the densities, it goes up to a maximum of 40%, correct?
Actually, I think it goes up to a maximum of 50%,
50.
depending on how many affordable units you're providing, the percentage of affordable units you're providing, and the type of affordability that you're providing.
So that would provide you, if you had 50%, that would provide you with 52 units, because you had 35, you add 50%, 17 and a half, you're looking at 52 and a half units per acre. But this one only has 5%. And unless they go back and they acquire some additional affordable units, make them, I don't know if that's possible, but at this point, they're entitled to a grand total of a maximum of 20% density bonus, correct?
Yes,
upon
if they want to do
5%
density
of-
bonus, correct, yes, 20%. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, based upon a 5% for very low
Correct.
income. And of course, the income issue is dependent upon if it's a family of one or family of two or family of four.
Yes.
That's why the number isn't set. Okay, so at 20%, the maximum density for this particular parcel is 35 times 1.2, which gets you to 42. Can we agree with that?
Yes, if
All
you
right, but-
only, you're talking about if you only consider parcel 2 as your area with the 5.33 acres plus the density bonus, et cetera.
So I think what Commissioner Rice was asking is does that extra 10 units per acre times 5.33 reduce the maximum number that can ultimately be in parcel 3?
No, because there's enough area to be able to provide that density. I did the calculation, I don't have it in front of me because I had the same question myself, and you could basically have both projects in the same location.
All right, so I understand that the density bonus is a sliding scale depending upon how many units, percentage of the total units that are assigned to affordable housing, correct?
Yes,
But we have one known. We have 5 units.
5%, 14 units, 5%.
Thank you. You're right. 14 units, 5%. Anytime I get 3 numbers lined up against one another, I start having my problems. So we've already, in essence, we're giving but for the other parcel, they couldn't do 53 units or 52 units per acre. They could do at 5%, they could do 20%
Correct.
density bonus times 35. So that's 1.2 times 35, that's 42 units, 42.5 units per acre, correct?
Based on the 5.33 acre site, yes.
But they're in essence borrowing from the other parcel. They're already taking density away from parcel 3 to fold into parcel 2. And what I'm trying to ask is I want to know, and my guess is the residents want to know, is, how does this play out? So that if we're saying and leaning back on, we're not pushing back on the question of density because there's this other parcel 3, but they're in essence borrowing against the total number in parcel 3, whatever that number would be, because we don't know what the percentages would be of affordable housing. I just want to make sure that that borrowing is calculated somewhere, that it's kept somewhere, and that we know it in case the next parcel, 10 years, 15, when we're all somewhere else. Well, gosh, I hope I'm not somewhere else, but somewhere else, that this is institutionally memorialized.
Yes.
And something that we won't, slip by.
It won't slip by because whenever a project comes in, the same analysis that we've done on this project, it'll be done on the next project.
But if it's not identified, so because it's a separate parcel, it's parcel 3. They sell parcel 3 to me, and I pretend like I don't know. And I come forward and say, well, I want to, I'm going to have 10% affordable housing in there, so this is what the density bonus that I want. And I get the whole shooting match, and I don't have to account for the extra 20 units the extra 10 units per acre that's already been borrowed against my parcel.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I understand. Let me back up a little bit. Technically, they don't need to do the parcel map. They're doing that for their own purpose business plan, but technically the project can proceed without doing the separation of the land. Is as opposed to when you have a tract home development that you need to have the tract map done so you can build the houses. This one's, in this particular case, you don't really need to have that because this is mixed use, so you are allowed to build it all without separating the land. I don't know if that helps you think of it a little bit differently or
doesn't.
not.
And Commissioner Hodge, I'll interject here. The plan development permit covers the entire existing shopping center. That's the mechanism for regulating this density study for future use and to make sure we're not double dipping based on the borrowing we're using. The plan development permit is the underlying development permit being considered, which covers all three proposed parcels essentially.
All right, so that would be within, that would be recorded as with part, I don't know if it's the deed or whatever, not with the deed, but whatever it is that would be recorded, and it would ultimately run with the land if that portion of the land was sold off.
It runs with the city approvals. That plan development permit is on city record.
And if I could chime in here, going back to the original question about using adjacent sites for the calculation of density, the density bonus law allows this if there are contiguous sites that are the subject of one development application. So here, even though there are 3 parcels, they're part of one development application. And so to Sean's point, this density would be recorded on, I guess, parcel 2, but in a future development, potential development of parcel 3, because the density was already included as part of this development application, the density calculation for parcel 3, I think, would have to include a consideration of the density of parcel 2.
Okay.
And I may not have said that very clearly. I hope the intent came across.
No, I understand. I think I understand what you're saying, and it makes sense to me. Real quick, and I'm hoping the applicant, I know the applicant's listening, but I mean, I hope the applicant will be able to address some of these issues. I want to talk real quickly about waiver number 5, the depth of 37 parking spaces, and get some definition as we move forward as to incentives and waivers, concessions and incentives, and then waivers. So I understand that they're looking for an incentive. The incentive is the 4th story, correct?
Yes, could you please repeat the question?
Sure. The incentive that they're seeking is the allowance of a 4th story, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And based upon the bonuses that they obtain, or rather are entitled to under the government code for 5% very affordable housing is one incentive. So that's it. That's the one they're using.
One incentive, yes.
And then the other waivers are provided in circumstances where, and I think this is Government Code 65915 E1,
Yeah.
it says, in no case may a city apply any development standard that will have the effect of physically precluding the construction of a development meeting the criteria, and then there's 3 dots, I don't know what's being taken out, at the densities or with the concessions or incentives permitted in this section, et cetera. It says if so in essence, you can't deny this unless there's and then it goes on to say, if the waiver or reduction would have a specific adverse impact as defined in paragraph 2 upon the health, safety, or physical environment for which there's no feasible method of satisfactorily mitigating or avoiding the specific adverse impact. So I understand that, but then we go down on page 9 of the staff report, the second complete paragraph towards the bottom, and it identifies concessions/incentives. It says concessions/incentives are defined as reductions in site development standards, such as the depth of parking spaces, correct?
Yeah, basically any development standard.
Okay. So concessions incentives are defined as reductions in site development standards or modifications of zoning/architectural design requirements that result in, quote, identifiable and actual cost reductions to provide for affordable housing, close quotes. And I can see how reducing the amount of space that would be required for some parking spaces would reduce the cost because you're going to have a smaller floor space, correct?
Yeah, if in this particular case, if they were to build the parking spaces to the full length, they will have to move everything over and potentially lose units.
Right. Well, that wasn't included within the staff report. It doesn't say how many units would be lost if you couldn't do that. So I don't, I'll leave that to the applicant to tell us. My question is, so I can see how reducing the size of the parking area would reduce the cost because you don't have to build as much parking space. So I can live with that, and I think it makes sense. But it goes on to say waivers are mandatory upon request of the applicant for development standards that, quote, physically preclude the construction of the project that qualifies for a density bonus or concession. So is this report saying that, okay, if we should give it to them if there's a financial incentive or a financial opportunity, but it's not mandatory unless the concession, the failure to provide the concession would result in make it a physical impossibility, or rather physically preclude the construction of the project that qualifies for a density bonus?
So to answer your question, that's an excellent question. So on the applicant's letter, which is in Exhibit 7 on page 6, when they're asking for the reduction of the size of the 37 stalls, they do say that to meet the required 9 by 18 requirement will physically preclude the project as designed and proposed. What the state code says further is that the agency, the city, has the burden of the proof that what they're saying, what the applicant is proposing, is not correct, or that we don't agree with a certain requirement, with a certain waiver that they're asking for. In this particular case, since they have a surplus of parking spaces, that we felt that it was a non-issue to allow the reduction of these spaces because this will not be the assigned parking for the units. These are extra parking spaces. We didn't feel it was necessary to go further to try to dispute the applicant on their request, since they already stated that this will physically preclude the construction of the project.
I didn't really want to get this granular at this point, but I will. Maybe the applicant can provide the information. Is the depth of a parking, so you've got, as I recall, you've got parking spaces that back into the aisle, the driveway aisle, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Or the parking aisle.
Yes,
Parking aisle's got to be 25 feet wide.
correct.
The parking space is 15 feet, typically 18 feet deep. We're going to change 37 of them to 15 feet deep, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, does that go from I assume that there are stops. I don't know what you call them, the concrete stops that prevent
Wheel
you from
stops.
running into the wall?
Yes, the drawing, they're actually showing wheel stops.
Okay. So what's the 15 feet measured to?
From as you see in this drawing, if you can tell, it's measured from the edge of the wall
All
to
right.
the end of the striping.
All right. So the edge of the wall, that means if you get up, you put your bumper within an inch of the wall, you've got 14 feet, 11 inches before the end of the parking space as we define it, correct?
Yeah, I think one thing I need to mention that our code does allow for compact parking spaces that are basically 7.5 by 15 feet long.
Okay.
In this particular case, they're only changing the length, not the width.
Is that a safety issue? This 25 feet and the vehicles sticking out into that 25 feet area?
From a traffic standpoint, no.
Well, not from a traffic standpoint, from a development standpoint. So we require 25 feet for some reason. We don't make this stuff up. So you've got 25 feet for this aisle, and you got vehicles that aren't penetrating that 25 feet when you have 18 feet as the depth. But if you have 15 feet, and if a vehicle is in excess of 15 feet, the vehicle is going to begin to penetrate that space, correct?
Potentially, yes.
All right. So this is really kind of for the applicant to sort of, some questions I want to know. I took a look at the vehicles in California, the most popular vehicles being purchased in the state of California. You got the Toyota Camry, 180 inches is 15 feet.
Correct.
The Toyota Camry is 192 inches, so that's a foot longer if you get the bumper right up to that wall. I mean, you touch it. The Honda Civic is 177 to 182, so that's a couple inches depending upon the model, a little bit longer for Honda Civic. The Toyota Prius is one of the shorter ones at 15 feet exactly, 180. The Toyota Corolla is 182 to 182 and a half inches. The Honda Accord, I have one, it's 192 inches, that's 16 feet. You have to get into the subcompacts like the Nissan Versa or even the Kia, like the Nissan Versa is 177 inches, 14 feet 9 inches. You get to within 3 feet of the wall, now you're just at 15 feet deep. So I'm looking at this as a safety issue. I hope the developer, the applicant rather, will address this. And I'm going to stop talking right now. I do have some other questions, but I'm going to wait until everybody has a chance to speak and then go on from there.
And Commissioner Hodge, if you allow me to maybe just expand a little bit on that. Our code, section 9-34.070, section A, compact parking spaces, item number 2, the spaces shall be a minimum of 7.5 feet in width and 15 feet in depth. So we used that. We didn't want to use the terminology of compact spaces because we didn't want them to go to a 7.5 foot width, and that's why we call them reduced size of parking spaces. But our code allows for 15 feet long parking spaces.
And let me clarify that, Claudia. That's just a reference to the former code. We don't allow compact parking anymore. in
That
the
is
city.
correct. That was for the prior, but nevertheless, that's a size that was accepted.
That is the prior size.
Okay.
And that parking stops aren't required.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no further questions right now.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Gray, you have questions?
Yeah, my questions are kind of going off that same topic. And considering the size of vehicles, I mean, I'm trying to get one of my vehicles into a tandem parking spot and all my storage. So it's been something I've been measuring. And I always thought that my car was a compact because it's a Honda Accord Coupe, and it's definitely 16 feet. And so my question to staff is kind of the same topic, is what happens if somebody parks a car? Because you've seen people and I'm glad to see that CME is not doing compact parking anymore because nobody seemed to adhere to it, or very few people did anyway. You would get, somebody with a very large truck or a larger vehicle than a compact parking in those spots. So what safety issues does the city have in being concerned with parking spots, that if you get somebody that parks in one of those spots that has a large, say a truck with a large bed on the back, what does that do to that parking spot and the safety? And how would that affect residents as well as the building owner itself? Like, what would the city end up doing if somebody is parked in a spot that is blocking the driveway in a sense? So if we reduce this down to a 15 foot and somebody parks there and all of a sudden you're now impeding on that 25 foot space, what happens?
So I think
If somebody calls the city and says, I'm complaining, I can't get out of my parking spot, or I can't back up, or whatever the situation is there something that is going to be done about it? And could it be potentially a problem?
I think one of the considerations to make on this is that this is a private parking garage and is only for use for residents or the guests of residents. So this isn't a public garage. You're not going to see the type of circulation that one would expect at a shopping center or a mall. So the amount
Okay,
of
that's true.
conflict that would occur in this parking structure, and assuming that everybody was moving all at once, we would have maybe 100 cars moving through a 4-story parking structure all at the same time, and not all in the same area. So the amount of conflict that could potentially occur would be very small. The other thing to consider is that two vehicles passing each other don't necessarily need 25 feet of width in order to
True.
pass each other. We like to see that to provide a margin of error, which again is how this 25 feet would accommodate any kind of overhang that would be associated with a compact space. So even if somebody were to park a Toyota Camry, which is technically a full-size vehicle or a mid-size car above and beyond, there would be a level of not confidence, but at least a buffer area that would allow people to maneuver around the cars. You would need to have two Ford F-350s parked across from each other in order for two cars not to be able to pass each other in this parking garage.
That's
And-
pretty much what I was visualizing.
Yes.
Okay.
So-
Then my other question, so I think I'd like to hear more about when the applicant is answering some questions on this. Is there a specific reason why staff were only going after the 14 units for affordable housing? I mean, it's a lot of units, there's 280 units, and it seems as though this is a opportunity where we could have caught up on some of our RENA requirements, and 5% seems very, very low.
That's what the applicant offer as far as the
And there's-
affordable units.
I think that is my only questions at this point. I think everybody else has asked an awful lot of questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gray. Commissioner Mann.
Actually, I'm going to wait till after the presentation by the developer.
Beautiful. I've got just a couple questions of staff. Is the Blockbuster was one of the former applicants in the shopping center. When did they leave the, when did they leave? When did they vacate the property, do you know?
You're asking that when are the tenants going to be vacating the property?
When did Blockbuster leave?
Oh, when they would, oh, sorry.
'Cause
That,
it's been
left
gone, it's been an empty place
Yes.
for
since 2014, January 2014.
8
That's when
years,
Blockbuster
it's been
left.
empty.
Yes,
Okay. And then this property was put into a mixed-use overlay district in what year? do you know?
2012. It was part
2012.
of the general plan update, and it was resolution 1190, 98.
93?
93, sorry.
Yeah. So, you know, the applicants seized an opportunity. It's been an empty property for 8 years plus. Okay. And that was it for me. Any other follow-up questions before we open up the public testimony? We will open the public testimony portion of the hearing. Would the applicant like to present the project? State your name, please.
Will do. My name is Colby Young. I am a Vice President of Asset Management for Garrity Group, the owner and operator of Santa Susana Plaza Shopping Center. First of all, good evening. I appreciate your time tonight. We're very excited to be here in position to discuss and present the project we've all been working on for quite a while now. I want to thank Ms. Pedrosa for her presentation and thank all of staff for their hard work to get us here at this point tonight. So this evening, I will give you a brief presentation on the project, and happy to answer all your questions at the end. I'm also joined by the project team this evening, our architect, Newman Garrison Partners, our civil engineer, Jensen Design, traffic engineer, ATE, our acoustics and noise consultant, Meridian, our communications team, EKA and Urban Strategies, and our land use consultant, Procopio. All right, so Garrity Group's been a member of the community for 8 years now. We acquired the Santa Susana Shopping Center in January of 2014. So a little bit about us. You know, we're based in Southern California. We are an owner-operator of neighborhood and community retail throughout the Western region. You can see here where our properties are located. And a little bit about the property. I don't want to repeat anything that was already said during the earlier presentation. But, you know, high level, anchored by a Walmart grocery store. And the property is, you know, being an older development retail property has it kind of experienced the evolution of the retail industry, and what happened in 2020, the pandemic kind of escalated or sped up a number of things that were in process. So, I mean, ultimately, what we're here to do is share our vision for a more relevant retail environment. And it's a little bit about some of the background on the overlay of the code, some of the zoning requirements. So what we have proposed here is consistent with city code. And we are very intentional about working within the code and not asking for a general plan amendment, not asking to go above and beyond what is allowed. There's a vision for the Tapo Street corridor, and in coordinating with staff in designing a project that we have proposed here, we are really actualizing the long-term vision and plan for the Tapo Street corridor, creating a mixed-use, sustainable project. A key element is really strengthening the remaining retail at the property. The goal here is not just to provide housing, mixed-use housing, but create more of a cohesive site. So the residential helps the retail helps residential, and it truly becomes a destination and neighborhood along with all the amenities that come along with the project. And in doing so and becoming a more relevant site in meeting the needs of the community, we saw residential as a solution to meet some of those needs. Last checked, there were about 950,000 square feet of industrial property under construction. And that is all very close to this site, and that all comes with a lot of jobs and a lot of new residents. So by providing the housing, we feel that we are meeting the need of a growing community. Simi Valley's done an amazing job of creating room for new jobs and creating a more stable, long-term city and budget. So we feel that by providing additional housing, we are helping achieve the goals of the city long-term. So here's a high-level site plan of our vision for a reimagined Santa Susana Plaza. I won't go into the project details that you all heard earlier, but I do want to point out in this visual, what really stands out to me, and I hope to you as well, is the amount of green space that the project includes. Because we're effectively taking asphalt and kind of underutilized land and adding about 50,000 square feet of new green space that does not exist, and really activates and energizes the Tapo Street corridor, as well as bolsters the health of the retail at the center. The way this lays out, having the half-acre public park here, kind of transitioning between the mixed use and the retail, is really, in our minds, a good transition and kind of an amenity or destination for the community and for the neighbors. I mean, we're really creating an enhanced experience for neighbors, residences, businesses, and shoppers alike, and making Santa Susana Plaza a true destination, a local destination.
Commissioner Parks can't see this on Zoom. Commissioner Gray?
Commissioner Gray, correct. You cannot see it on Zoom. What we can do is Claudia can run the stick drive that Mr. Young provided onto our system to share the screen.
Okay, let me save this down to the machine, and then I can give you the USB. Okay. Should I recap some of this to help out and go through the slides again?
You may run through the slides briefly. I think she heard your presentation, but if you just want to show the images real quick.
Okay.
Fine.
Actually, I guess Ms. Pedroso would have to do that, correct?
She can start from the top, and you can just tell her to move to the next slide.
She's going to share this. She's going to share their screen with the slides that you provided for her.
Okay. So does that mean the whole, or the entire virtual audience could not see the presentation? Okay.
No, you can watch it on TV and on YouTube as well.
Okay.
I think it's better that you go ahead and run the presentation. We should run the presentation. I want the commissioner to see it so there's no due process argument.
Yeah, we're gonna go through every slide that you presented so far.
Okay, perfect. I'll just do a quick recap of what I said so it all has context.
Commissioner Gray, if you have any questions, we'll stop and slow down if we need to. Please. Commissioner Gray, can you see that?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Okay, you ready?
Let me set
Mr. Young, we're going to start the 15 minutes again, start over.
Okay, perfect.
Does that work?
Yes, thank you. Okay, this slide was my introduction, who I am, a little bit about Garrity Group, and then our design team who's here tonight. And then next slide. A little bit about Garrity Group, owner and operator of neighborhood and community retail throughout the Western US. Next slide. And some specifics about Santa Susana Plaza. I went over a little bit of the history, the changes in retail, this being an older center, and our vision to make it a more relevant retail environment and kind of address some of the changes in retail over the years, and how the pandemic kind of sped up a lot of retail trends are already in process and led to where we are today with the project in front of us and the ability to kind of re-energize the property. All right, and my comments here were really emphasizing that the project we have in front of you tonight is consistent with City Code. It is actualizing Simi Valley's vision for Tapo Street and the Tapo Street corridor, a sustainable reuse of existing developed land, strengthening the remaining retail, and meeting the needs of a growing job base with, I mentioned the 950,000 square feet of industrial under construction. One comment that I didn't make on this slide, which I should have, is one of the objectives of the Tapo Street overlay is to improve underutilized commercial land to meet market demands. And I feel like that really summarizes what we have designed and what we are presenting this evening. And this is our vision for the reimagined Santa Susana Plaza. I highlighted the amount of green space that this project includes, about 50,000 square feet of new green space that does not exist today. We're essentially replacing existing asphalt and vacant buildings with a significant amount of green space, including a half-acre park available and accessible to the public, residents, and shoppers, and a great amenity for everyone, and kind of enhancing the experience overall for neighbors, residents, businesses, and shoppers. Okay, now I think that kind of caught us up to where we were. Great. And this slide just illustrates and kind of summarizes the level of outreach that went, it was a part of this project to get to a design that we see today. The project went through numerous iterations. And the reason for the change is because we were constantly seeking and collecting feedback from the community and stakeholders and kind of refining the design, refining the project based on what we're hearing, because at the end of the day, we want a project that is a win for everybody, for the site, for the neighbors, for the residents, for Simi Valley overall. So on the left column, you'll see our outreach. Most recently, we had 2 neighborhood council meetings in December. Prior to that, in June and July, we had 3 neighborhood community meetings. 2 were virtual, and 1 was in person on site in one of the vacant suites. We used all those to collect feedback and help kind of inform and improve the design of the project to really come forward with the best solution and the best product for everyone. On the right is just an example of the mailer we sent out. Notice that we included a clear Zoom link, and to make it easy for everyone to access the Zoom link, we included a QR code because we really wanted to make it simple and expand our reach to ensure we had maximum participation in the community outreach process. It's also worth noting that the city has a minimum radius requirement for mailers. We went above and beyond that because we wanted to cast a wider net and make sure we included more of the community than the minimum requirement. Okay, so got to this slide. This is my favorite slide. I really love this visual because it illustrates a number of things. I mean, one, it shows the quality of the proposed project, just the design, the articulation, the thought, the way it blends into the existing site. And it also highlights ways in which we listen and modify the design to include the feedback we were hearing or concerns we were hearing. We noted the step backs and the tiered architecture, the design elements along the facade, the articulation, building up close to the sidewalk to energize and activate Tapo Street. Something as simple as removing the overhead power lines. And at the end of the day, to show the quality of project that is possible when we work together for a local solution to a housing shortage. So I won't go through all of these ways in which we listen, but I think it's worth noting that there are many ways and many changes that were done over time to address feedback and concerns. All right, again, another project summary. I won't go into the details of the data, but it is kind of a zoomed in version or zoomed in on the mixed use component. And again, I think it's worth noting that what we have proposed here is the most sustainable form of development. We're taking an existing developed site, this existing asphalt and vacant retail, and providing new open space, a re-energized and activated community center that's adjacent to retail to encourage more pedestrian access, less use of cars, more use of walking and biking, just a green solution and a kind of a green upgrade or improvement to the site. What we have proposed here is fully consistent with CEQA. It is fully consistent with our affordable housing agreement is fully consistent with city code and state law. And to Ms. Pedroso's comment earlier, it shows the garage and the design of the garage, which is wrapped in residential units, meaning from any perspective you look at this building, you don't see a concrete parking structure. You see well-designed, thoughtful, beautiful architecture all the way to the top. So it's, I think it really is a well thought out, well-designed improvement to the property. In a little more detail on the property, these are just a handful of the amenities, but the intent of this slide is to, again, emphasize that by adding all of these amenities, it really is a high-quality project and benefit to residents and those around. Again, it emphasizes the amount of green space that's being added, the half-acre public park, a great option for events and community use or just passive uses. And also, the subject of parking, came up, and I anticipate more questions regarding parking. But what's required is 312 per code, and we're going well above and beyond code because we don't want to deliver a project that doesn't function operationally. So what we have designed here in the parking count is more than sufficient to meet the needs of a functional mixed-use project, as well as the surface parking on the retail, which is out of frame. That also exceeds the parking requirements for retail and for surface parking. This perspective here, it kind of shows the integration of the mixed use with the retail to remain the rest of the shopping center. And really what we're creating here is an environment for healthy, relevant retail to thrive. Increasing the activity, having residents in walking distance to daily needs and services like a grocer, I think is key to having a successful project that also meets the long-term needs of sustainability. And long-term, our goal is to continue to meet the needs of the neighborhood with the retail element and with the mixed-use element. Okay, the last slide was just another perspective of the half-acre park. It kind of showed the perspective from the plaza. So again, a great amenity, great site for active or passive uses or events. So I hope I stayed under my 15 minutes. I felt like I kind of rushed that, but that kind of brings us to the conclusion of the presentation. And now I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has, and anything that I can't answer, I'm confident that our project team is here to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Questions for the applicant, Commissioner Hodge?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Young. Just a couple of, the 417 parking spaces that you referenced, are those all in the parking structure?
Parking structure is 405. That includes the parking in front of the park as well, with the 417.
I see. Who maintains the park?
The owner of the mixed-use project. That's within the parcel of the mixed-use project. So that would be responsible for us.
Okay. So it's the park district's not taking it over. You guys are going to maintain.
No additional expenses or burden to the city budget. It's something we would do.
And I saw those tables and chairs. Honest to goodness, I hope they stay there. But, all right, I like that element of the project. I probably sounded like a bit of a nitpicker a little while ago, talking about the 15-foot depth of 37 parking spaces. Ultimately, I can see it's better to have those 37 parking spaces than to delete them. You could delete them because you have more parking spaces than you're required by state law. Now, if you didn't have the other element of the affordable, you would have to comply with Simi Valley standards, which would require more parking. You probably wouldn't have an excess, and I really commend you for having more than state law requires, because I agree with you, especially with a town like Simi Valley, in which 80% of our residents leave town to work somewhere else. We're a car-dependent community, and having more spaces, I think, is very commendable and a good thing to do for the future tenants. But there are going to be other projects that we're going to face. It's just not yours, and there are other people who are going to want to do things with large retail spaces and convert them into houses, et cetera, and they may have affordable components. And I like to think that we try to do everything we can to remain consistent. So with respect to your proposal, I think it was your letter. I think it's Exhibit 7, Mr. Gibson. On page 6 of Exhibit 7, talking about waivers, it says reduction of size of 37 stalls. It references the 9 by 18 requirement. And to accommodate development project, Garrity requests permission to waive this standard and reduce the size of a total of 37 stalls to 9 by 15. To meet the required 9 by 18 requirement would physically preclude the project designed and proposed. Well, I can see how having those spaces a little bit smaller will save you money, because to accommodate those 37 spaces being 18 feet, you'd have to change the design, increase the size of the footprint, et cetera. So maybe it's a financial issue. But I don't think it physically precludes the project from being proposed, or designed rather, strike that, from being developed, because you could just eliminate the spaces. So I don't want to get into a position at some point in the future where people are talking about doing things for to earn waivers, or to have a waiver provided, and it's inconsistent with sort of the reality of things. To my mind, this is a financial issue, and it provides you an opportunity to support the affordable. And we're not mandated, we're not required to turn you down, the way I read it. I think that I'm curious if staff agrees, that if this was not, I don't think it physically precludes you from building the project. I think that it's a financial issue. And I could live with that. I'd rather have the 37 15-foot spaces than have them eliminated. So I don't know, if we're going to be consistent with the way that we apply the rules. I would hope that we could figure out some way to modify the reasoning for the requested waiver that would be consistent with something that we could live with in the future. Just a thought.
May I respond?
By all means.
To comment. So the motivation is not financial in the sense of construction costs and having smaller spaces. The real impact is we're working within an existing footprint of a parking structure that functions properly. And by expanding the exterior by 3 feet, that then pushes and squeezes the units to a size that really isn't viable or functional. And so by decreasing the sizes, we're really losing units in doing so. And that's a high-level answer, and I'm happy to let the design team elaborate in more detail. But
I understand that if you were required to expand those to get to 18 feet, it's got to come from somewhere. And unless you have a balloon that you can put more air in to expand the building, which you don't, then you would have to eliminate something on the interior, and that apparently would be not parking structure, it would be units, and I can understand that. But what I'm suggesting is that the alternative is to eliminate the parking, and because you've got extras. It's not like you're up against the line and you couldn't do it. So you're physically able to do it. Having this requirement wouldn't physically preclude you from building the project to the density that you're entitled to. I still think that the analysis goes the other way, that it's a financial issue, because to eliminate it, you could eliminate it. You could, and you could probably save some money by just eliminating them. But I'd rather you have them, because 37 more spaces that are a little short, there are vehicles, in fact, that would be good for. It would be good for motorcycles. I don't know if you've got a place for motorcycles. And so it would be good, but I just want to make sure that we're approving things for the right reasons. And that's why I was asking those questions with such vehemence. I don't have any other questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
No one else is on the queue here. Commissioners, questions for the applicant? Commissioner Gray? Okay.
I do have one question, Chairperson.
Vice Chair, Chairperson Rice.
So my question is about the east side of the building, the part by the meditation garden and the recreation garden?
Right.
I'm just curious why just a little bit more wasn't done there. I mean, look, I'll be honest, the architecture, I think, is great.
Thank you.
Of the building. It really is. It's very nice. But those two parts that come out are just very bland. And I'm just kind of baffled by that, why there isn't just some sort of element there to to make it pop just a little bit.
Like we can let the architect answer that if you'd like to, but I think my initial answer or response is one of the earlier designs actually had balconies facing that direction, and based on some of the feedback we heard, there was concerns about too many units facing the residences on Workman Avenue. So we turned them around and had the balconies only face the courtyard, kind of creating that flat surface there. But to your comment, if you're asking or looking for more explanation on the architectural considerations, I can.
I just was hoping there'd be something that's just not quite so bland on those two parts, And like I said, it could be artistic or color changes or something. It's just kind of a stark light color with a couple windows in it, and it just seems so out of place for the rest of the building. That's all.
Sure. Yeah, I understand, and we're open to recommendations, considerations on how to do so. But really, the intent behind that design was to minimize the views.
Right. No, I'm completely with you on that. I completely understand. I just don't know why that one spot is just so bare, and that's all. That's it.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Mann?
No, actually,
Okay.
Most of the questions I had questions about have been asked and answered, so the developer did a great job on the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Do we have members of the public wish to make a?
I'm sorry, Chairperson Tolson, real quick. Just, Mr. Young, following up on what Commissioner Rice just asked, staff had included within the staff report and mentioned specifically during the presentation concerns regarding the design elements and the bland appearance, the lack of 360 architecture, which is one of the standards that we go by, on that side of the building facing the on the east elevation facing the neighbors. And I'm curious to know what your thought is to staff's recommendation, specifically that should be improved upon. I realize that articulation can be very expensive, but articulation can be perceived, and you could also have some design elements that don't include balconies. And I agree that balconies on that side would be inappropriate because of privacy issues for the local tenants who were substantially below where those balconies would be. But do you have any objection to working with staff to improve upon the architectural features as described in the staff report?
Yes, we're happy to work with staff to address that. And we had been working with them in the past, because if you look at the building facing east, on the northern portion, there is a significant amount of design element and articulation and thought put into that portion of the building, because this was a comment that came up from staff early on. And we felt we had addressed the concern for 360 architecture by improving that long stretch or that portion of the building with additional design elements.
By the way, how far is the setback? 38 feet is the number I saw in the staff report for the third story versus fourth story. Fourth story is 38 feet back. But does that account also for the east elevation?
East elevation.
It doesn't look like it.
Andy, do you know the setback there?
It's stepping back about 18 feet.
Okay, so about an 18-foot step back on the eastern portion.
Yeah, it looks like it's divided so that there's two forms of building or two types of building, one that might have a setback and the other one that's just flat 4 stories. Is that true?
No, I think we have setbacks throughout.
No, we step through.
Yeah, please.
Kevin Newman with Newman Garrison Partners. One of the things that we really work closely with staff on, the original design did not have as much articulation. So if we can somehow bring that east elevation up, I want to bring a couple of items to attention that we did address. From the very beginning, there was always the consensus that we were going to step the 4th floor back. When we met with staff, that was one of the recommendations that they gave us before we even had any outreach meetings. So the 4th floor had already been stepped back a total of, I believe, 8 feet. Okay. In addition to that, when we met with staff again, the comment was brought up, can we do something additional to the eastern elevation. And so one of the things I want to bring up is that we literally took sections of the building and we pushed it back an additional 8 feet, 10 feet actually. So we have a 32-foot deep module, building module. And in some cases, we took that back to about 25 to 26 feet. So it's a considerable step back. And then in addition, you're still getting the upper floors that are stepping back. So once we see that elevation, I want to bring that to everyone's attention.
This is
Because
just,
it's hard to see that in a two-dimensional.
is your analysis limited to the eastern elevation?
Pardon me?
Is your analysis that you're providing right now limited to the eastern elevation?
No, we did it to the north and to the east.
Okay, my questions relate to the eastern elevation that face the neighbor.
Yes, and that's what I'm referring to right now is the eastern elevation.
Right? There you go.
Is this the only view that we have? We did several renderings. Yeah, in our presentation. If we can bring that up, because you can't see it here.
I did open up your presentation. I didn't see anything
There
on
was
the east side.
nothing on the east side on your presentation.
Oh, okay. Then we'll need to go back to the floor plan and then maybe I can somehow articulate what we did.
Yeah, real quick, as you look at that picture, it doesn't even look like the same development.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We need to.
See the lack of any architectural et ceteras that we were just talking about? It looks like a different building.
Well, if we can go back to the building plan, I'm going to show you where we stepped the entire building back. That would be the best way I could describe it since we don't have the accompanying renderings. Okay, so if you look at the east elevation, you see the tan buildings or tan units that are in between the two blue ones. Okay, so if you look at go to the two units right to the left of where your cursor is, right there. No, right there. No, back to the right. Okay, those two units, we literally step back 10 feet. And if you go to the elevation, which we don't have, that entire building mass goes up to the third floor and then steps back on the fourth floor in addition. What we also did is we completely color blocked the entire back of the building to complement both the off-white and the tan colors. So we've created these blocks that are articulated by not only color, but vertical and horizontal massing changes at the request of planning. The same elements were also incorporated to the north side. So if we can go to the north elevation, I can point those out, and then you can see that the similarities is what we did on the east side. Okay, so when you look at the partial north elevation, on the left side of the garage entrance, you'll see the beige building and it's cut out. Well, that white portion is back 10 feet. So it's hard to see that in this elevation, but in 3 dimensions, you'll notice that there's a complete setback of the building. We did the exact same thing on the east side. The difference is the white portion goes all the way down to grade. So the entire building facade is pushed back. And this elevation, the rendering there doesn't show it. Okay, you can see it. On the east side, you can see the white building portion. That goes all the way down to grade and is pushed back 10 feet. And all the white that you see is pushed back an additional 8 feet from the third floor. So those are the step backs we talked about. And then we accentuated those with the color blocking. This is a completely different facade than what we originally presented to staff. So hopefully that explains. I wish we had the 3D renderings because they're a lot more compelling.
Yeah, I think that there's articulation, but it's just, I mean, you take a look at the left side of that, as Commissioner Rice was saying. I mean, does that look like the project out front? That project out front's gorgeous.
That was taken into consideration from the meetings that we had had with the outreach and with planning.
I get no balconies, but boy, there could be something that.
Well, there's also a 6-foot-high wall there that you don't see, and then there's also landscape, and it's probably going to go up about 15 to 20 feet.
That would be helpful. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask a few questions too?
Please, Commissioner Gray.
Hi. Thank you you very much for your, thank you also for going back because I couldn't see those slides and I knew that you were pointing at something that was really important. I do have a question in regards to the very low income and low income, and I'm going to go back to the affordable housing issues that you're proposing the 14 units for very low income, and the very low income we're saying is just under, $20 an hour, depending on your calculations. It's $39,250, I think, for one person. But so, I mean, what did you come up with? Something like $18 an hour. I think I came up with 19 something, but studios and one bedrooms are 74% of the units, correct?
Correct.
And even at 62,000 a year, I mean, we're still only talking about $31 an hour. So that would be low income. And is there a specific reason why that you're not proposing more for that income range? Not necessarily a very low income, you're giving 14 units, but for the low income units that are around $31 an hour, a lot of the jobs that we have in Simi Valley, we're trying to reduce, from what I understand, is, commuting. And if people are commuting, they should be able to live where they work. And that would be one thing that would be helpful. Is there a reason why that you didn't go for any of the very low or the low income housing?
Well, we elected to go with the housing category or the AMI category for 60% of AMI, and adding 5% of those units as an element to the project, again, based on feedback and a need in general for affordable housing. But I think it's also important to point out two things to address your comment. The project overall, the design, the consideration, the amount of analysis that went into it, what we're providing here is something we call affordable by design. So the project and the units lay out in a very functional, efficient way to allow us to lease the units at a rate below the existing market rate today. Today's average rent is about $2,500 a month for a unit. And the way we've designed and created these units, it functionally allows us to lease that for less than the existing market rent today. So though there are a number of units, 14, that meet the definition of state housing law for affordability, the project overall is affordable, in comparison to the rest of the market rent. And that was a very thoughtful consideration to make sure that we can meet the needs of the workforce, and it's a project that's appropriate for the residents of Simi Valley. So though only 14 units are affordable per the state definition, all the units we feel are affordable in the sense that they're below market today. And then the other comment was in regards to the ability for residents to have the option to work from home. One thing that we didn't really get into too much detail on, but is an important component of the project, is we include a workspace that's available to all residents where they can leave their units, have a complete office setup, and have access to true office space, either in an office cube setting, in a shared space setting, or in a conference room setting. So it's kind of adding like almost a WeWork element to the project as an additional amenity to anyone living there.
How would a resident do that if they were renting a studio? Do they have to sign up to be able to use this space, or?
Exactly, you sign up ahead of time and you pre-book it. It's essentially kind of hoteling the community office space, and so it's something they can reserve ahead of time for as long as they choose to. And we also include the live-work units, so units where you have kind of a ground floor storefront for any entrepreneurial person who has their own business. That could be a real estate, an attorney, someone who has their own craft or whatever business they choose, and then they have direct access to their unit upstairs, so you truly can live and work in the same space.
Right, those are the 10 units.
Correct.
Okay. I would still like for you to consider more of the affordable housing elements. In regards to the back spacing, that there's a lot of homes that, and I'm really glad that CME has really concentrated on all four walls, because some of the very, very older buildings, the backsides were never something that was considered. And even the homes behind still have to look at that. I do appreciate that you do show that there's going to be taller trees going up, but even maybe some architectural design, little whatever you call those little trellises that go over the window, because it's an east facing window to begin with, that maybe that would help with some of the morning light. Those types of small things can add some architectural design elements that would be nice to see. But I do really appreciate the efforts that specifically the feedback that you got from the community. Very, very thoughtful to be able to put something together and then make those adjustments for what the community asked for. So those are my only questions. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Okay, so you can, Mr. Young, you can sit down. We got some cards filled out. We only have 3 cards for people who want to speak. So if anybody else has a card, they want to bring it forward. Where do I drop it? Yeah, this first. Fantastic. So what we're going to do is call you in order, and then we're going to do 3 minutes each. You stand forward, and we'll start with Philippe Chavez, followed by Thomas Miner. Mr. Chavez, you've got 3 minutes.
Good evening. So I've actually been living on Workman for 24 years. So my concern is regarding the traffic situation. And also on the illustrations that we saw up here, I noticed that the 99-cent store, is that gone? Yeah. Okay, so they'll be completely gone there, okay. Will there be access to the shopping center from Cochrane going all the way through to like the Walmart, or is that going to be cut off?
There'll be direct access.
Mr. Chavez, you got to address us, and then
I'm
what
sorry.
we'll do is at some point we'll let him answer.
Got it. So then also another concern was in regards to, is there any projection as to what will be the result on the property values of, the neighborhood, right? The immediate neighborhood, like on Workman. The big concern is with the traffic and just everything that's gonna, without construction for all this, the time frame. When would it start? When would it end? Those type of things.
Beautiful. You've got 1.5 minutes left.
Those are all my questions.
Thank you very much. Thomas Miner, followed by John Detriment.
Good evening. I was wondering about this mixed-use development. What is the big itch about this? Seems like we have a lot of it already, where the farmer's building was, Tapo and Alamo also. And, 4,750 of square feet is hardly anything of new commercial space. I mean, that's not even the size of a 7-Eleven. Seems like that's just a ploy to, get more housing built. But the farmer's building was 7 stories tall. It had no neighbors nearby, at least not in view of them worrying about people peering in the yards and et cetera. But this is right next to 1-story houses and those duplexes on the other side. Seems very close and an invasion of their privacy. Plus, it just seems out of place. It seems not conducive to the area, and in fact, seems indicative of very poor planning. Plus, the drought. Where's all the water going to come from for these units? We always hear about the drought. It takes a lot of water to build things, plus, of course, for the residents to use. And the population of California is supposedly going down. Where's the need for this? And that's about it for now.
Thank you, Mr. Miner. John, I'm messing up the last name, but Detriment, followed by Stan Yu.
I live on Workman. I will be directly affected by this project. I appreciate speaking to the developer when he came out to visit with us and speak to us. I appreciate that they took down the balconies facing my backyard where I will lose all, when this project is complete, I will lose all privacy in my backyard. And that's one of my biggest concerns is I will lose all privacy in my backyard with the people on the 3rd and 4th floor looking directly into my backyard. I own my house and I have no privacy at all. It just seems a shame. And then if I ever go to sell, who's going to buy it? I mean, it totally ruins my property value having a 4-story building looming over me, period. The other thing is, on another note, is you've talked about the plantings. I would really appreciate it to help mitigate part of the problem if we get some reassurance as a homeowner who'd be affected that on the development side of the wall, that they will put up a lot, 30, 40, 50, 60 of those Italian cypress or whatever those are called, that look like junipers that go up 25 feet, so that we would much rather look at a green stuff than I don't care what they have to make it look pretty on their building. I don't want windows looking into my backyard. So that's my big concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stan Yu is our last speaker in the chambers.
Thank you very much. I'm interested in this project because I do foresee Simi Valley as well as much of California becoming a little bit less car-oriented with time. My questions for the developers and the Planning Commission is, number one, access. That is, what kind of direct access do residents have to the streets and to the retail space to the south and to the west without having to cross driveways or parking lots, because people don't like crossing driveways or walking across parking lots if they can avoid it. Why are there enclosed patios at the street level? I think that more walkable development is something that reduces barriers between the building and the street, both physically and psychologically. Perhaps we can replace those walls around the patios with bollards or soft hedges. Will there be let's see here. I also object to palm trees on the Tapo Street side because palm trees hardly give any shade. And one thing pedestrians like is shade where they're walking. So I would like to see those palm trees replaced with real shade trees, perhaps sycamore trees or pine trees. My question/concern is about the commercial space, both the new commercial space and the existing retail space to the south. Can it be made more flexible for maximizing occupancy and response to changing market conditions? For example, instead of just retail and shops, could it be subdivided so that, let's say, two restaurants can occupy one restaurant space? Sometimes happens. You could also have professional services, accountants, doctors, other kinds of office in those spaces. You could have other things. And finally, I'm interested in, number one, the size of the storage units, those tenant storage units. I'd like to know the dimensions. And also, what kind of outdoor bike parking will there be if there are more bicycles than there are allotted bicycle spaces? Will there be bike parking for visitors as well, places for people to lock their bikes outside? That concludes my comments and questions.
Thank you, Mr. Yu. We've got some people apparently via Zoom. Do any members of the public wish to make a public statement on Zoom for this item? And if so, please use the hand raise function of your computer or *9 on your phone, and staff will unmute you when it's your turn. And we're doing, again, 3 minutes per person.
Armando Delgado, you are unmuted.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, staff, and fellow residents. My name is Armando Delgado, and I am a United States Marine Corps veteran and a local tradesman. I am a member of the Southwest Regional Council of Carpenters, who represent over 60,000 professional union carpenters. I am a local representative for 1,900 working carpenter families of Local 805. We keep a strong interest in land use planning and addressing the environmental impacts of new developments. Our organization and partners help provide career opportunities for transitioning veterans, like myself, just as involved individuals, like some of my apprentices, women, students, and disadvantaged residents as well. Our apprenticeship program only works when developers and contractors are partnered with us and the community. As a resident of the area, I believe that my fellow brothers, sisters, and their families would be adversely impacted in many ways by the environmental impacts and the quality of life from this project. For example, the city should include labor provisions that require this large-scale, high-density project to be built utilizing a local and skilled trained workforce. The city should require this for the benefit of the community's economic development and environment. The city should require the use of these workers who have graduated or are currently enrolled in a labor management apprenticeship program that is approved by the state of California, like the one we have here in Local 805. The local hire and skilled trained workforce requirements, they help reduce construction-related environmental impacts while benefiting the local economy. Community benefits such as local hire and skilled workforce requirements help reduce environmental impacts. When there's a certain percentage of workers that reside within 10 miles or less of the project, it can reduce the length of vendor trips, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and provide local economic benefits. There are many reports that are out there that prove this to be. As a California Workforce Development Board and the UC Berkeley Center for Labor Research concluded, labor should be considered an investment rather than a cost. And investments in growing, diversifying, and upskilling California's workforce can positively affect returns on climate mitigation efforts. In other words, well-trained workers are the key to delivering emissions reductions and moving California closer to the climate targets. Again, we should be considered an investment, not an expense. The city and the Planning Commission, the policies get implemented. Together, you can build a local skilled and trained workforce that will help build projects for the future. My name is Armando Delgado. I represent the 1,900 working families of Carpenters Local 805. I hope we can be brought to the table to help empower our youth and our locals in creating a better community wealth for the citizens and the residents of Simi Valley. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Delgado.
Rob Fallon, you are unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Rob Fallon, and I'm also a member of the Local 805 Carpenters, but I'm an actual working member in the field, and I also live in Simi Valley. Building housing in Simi Valley, that's a good thing. We need housing. We're running short. It'd be great if the people who moved in could maybe shop in the First Street Mall. Maybe we could revitalize that and bring some more money to our local economy. But what I would like to see with this housing project is that you guys try to implement the local hiring clause. A fine example would be the Patricia Avenue apartments beside Wells Fargo. They were built with what we'd consider a local contractor, but with no local hire clause. That contractor went and hired a company in Texas that brought over out of town workers. Well, what does this do for us? This brings more pollution into our city, it brings more congestion. It brings people into our city who aren't spending money in our city. It means that I, who live in the city, cannot get a job in the city because we're using out-of-state contractors, and instead I have to keep driving to Long Beach to work. Also, being from the west side of Simi, around Royal Avenue, how many houses have tarps on their roofs? How many people are letting their front yards look like trash? There's really no money circulating in the area And with these big projects, if Simi Valley would push a local hiring clause, we could stimulate our economy. Maybe we could get rid of a few of these tarps and make our area look like Simi Valley and not, as some people like to say, Slimy Valley. You know, we have to work together to bring money to this area, revitalize it, grow it, use a local hiring clause, skilled workers, and keep building our local economy. That's all I've got to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Fallon.
Cassandra Douglas, you're unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Hi, my name is Cassandra Douglas. I'm a resident of Simi Valley. I'm an advocate and lead with Ventura County YIMBY, as well as director of advocacy for Rise Simi Valley. So I'm very involved in the community, and I do hear a lot from community members. I am a lifelong resident of Simi Valley. I grew up here. My mom grew up here. I'm calling in to request that the Planning Commission approve the Santa Susana project. This project is a great project. I'm excited to see a project like this in Simi Valley, to see something so modern in Simi Valley, which is, you know, a quote unquote bedroom town. You know, I'm a millennial. I grew up here. I can say there's nothing to do here. Even now, there's nothing to do here on the weekends past 10. Having something like this where it kind of gives a little bit more of a city feel, a younger vibe, having accessibility to studios and creative workspaces, just something so modern that's going to help Simi Valley, having accessibility to the commercial spaces. You know, I'm a mom myself, so just to think about walking downstairs to go to a grocery store instead of having to go pack kids in a car and, you know, carry groceries from a car, this and that, just the accessibility to be able to do something along those lines every day in your living space is amazing and fantastic. So I'm requesting that the Planning Commission approve this wonderful project. I do want to express my interest in requesting the addition of more affordable units. 14 is great. It's also great that they're very low income. I'd like to see some more extremely low income and then just some more in general. But again, this is such a great project, and I'm requesting that the Planning Commission approve it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Douglas.
Pedro Toscano, you're unmuted.
Pedro, can you hear us?
Good evening, commissioners and Madam Commissioner. Thank you for your time today. I did want to address everyone. My name is Pedro Toscano. I'm also a member of the Southwest Regional Council of Carpenters. I'm a member, and I also work in the Labor Compliance Committee. And I just wanted to ask and recommend from the commissioners if we could implement and adopt a skilled and workforce requirements into the general plan or the municipal code of this project. If we could think back at not the previous 10 years or nothing, but the last 5 major jobs that were done in Simi Valley. I visit these jobs as, you know, senior housing, apartment complexes, and every single one of these projects was not a resident from Simi Valley or neighboring cities that gave an opportunity to those individuals to work here. They were brought from out of state, out of the area, other counties, and at the end of the day, when they get paid, they go and spend that money in those areas. That money doesn't stay here in our city, and that doesn't help our teachers, the taxes that go into teachers, police officers, firefighters, and you know, and then to anybody in the municipality itself. So please, I recommend and I hope you take consideration in implementing a skilled workforce for this project at the Tapo mixed use and any other project in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Toscano.
Jose Arias, you're unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Jose Arias. I'm a carpenter from Local 805. I'm a member of the community, and I like my fellow members. I'd like to tell you about if you guys can consider to bring a skill and train a workforce, local workforce, to this project. Um, that will help our families, so we can afford those new complex and live right here in our city. So that's pretty much what I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arias.
Philip Luce, you're unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, Mr. Luce.
Good evening, commissioners. Thank you so much for letting us speak on this project. It's been a while since I've been this excited about a project like this, with something that we've badly needed, especially considering the location and the type of project that this is. Checks a lot of the boxes with helping us with our RENA goals, providing additional housing options for younger generations, contributing to meeting some of the supply shortage we have with housing, easing rent burden families and individuals. So checks a lot of those boxes. It's centrally located near bus lines, near the train station. And it's certainly a step in the right direction towards the vision of the general plan that we have for the city. And it's redeveloping a depressed area. So lots of pluses there. Would love to see, I would have loved to see more housing there and more affordable component. I understand there's always a financial challenge there, and certainly the surrounding area and the community has input on that. You probably did the best you could, but certainly just would like to make my input known that, considering the very aggressive RENA and housing goals that we have, we don't have a whole lot of infill projects to take advantage of. And so when we do have them, building as much housing as we possibly can is certainly a goal I think we should try to accomplish. But overall, I think the project is definitely a step in the right direction, and I would like to see it approved. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Luce.
Man, you are unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, apologies. I am driving. I am on Bluetooth, I promise. But I just wanted to call in today and make my support known for this project. I am also, my name is Rootman, by the way. I think I forgot to say that. I'm Rootman. I live in District 1, but I drive past this empty lot almost every day, and I've been waiting patiently for something to be built there. I am also part of Neighborhood Council 1, so I was a part of the presentation that we got, and may I say that this complex is beautiful. I think it'll make the whole area look a lot nicer than it does now with the abandoned buildings that are there currently. I did want to make it known that I also do want it to be considered to add more affordable units.
Ms. Mann, you're cutting out.
I know this is something we discussed at well, and that was actually a part of our motion. I looked at the meeting minutes because we did discuss at meeting minutes to see that we discussed more affordable units at length. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Mann.
Starlene, you are unmuted.
Darlene, I think you need to unmute yourself, or we need to unmute her. Do we need to go back to her and go on to the next person, or are we going to keep trying with this one?
We can come back. Next would be Joe Alaya. Sorry about that. You are unmuted.
Mr. Alaya. Yeah.
Hi. Good evening, good evening, commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Good evening, commissioners. I support this project. I believe that we need more affordable housing in Simi Valley and greater housing density for our future generations. My family and I have lived here since my children were very little. And in those days, housing was expensive, but still affordable, for most. Nowadays, homes are out of reach for many first-time home buyers. I support this project, although I would ask the city to implement a skilled workforce agreement to this plan in order to keep our money here at home. Strong local unions create a strong local economy. I would also ask the applicant to create more affordable units. And I sincerely hope the Planning Commission will also support this project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ayala. We're going to go back to Darlene or to the next person? JP?
JP, you are unmuted.
Do we need to go on to the next person and come back?
Milo Terzic, you are unmuted.
No, I'm sorry, I don't have any comments. My hand should be raised.
Thank
My
you very
apologies.
much.
Pamela Conrad, you're unmuted.
No comments, thank you.
Rebecca, you're unmuted.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, so good evening. Good evening, planning commissioners. My name is Rebecca Albron, and I am a resident of Simi Valley, lifelong resident. I am a former neighborhood council board member for District 3. I'm also currently a lead with Ventura County YIMBY, which stands for Yes in My Backyard. I really love this mixed use aspect of this project. I also like the different types of units being offered, such as studios and the live work units. I think those are really great. I do have to say that for me, one of the most important things that I would like to see from planning commissioners and maybe from the developer is really more effort to increase the affordable units, the very low income and all those brackets, because we are redeveloping on a space and we're adding a lot of units, but we really need to add a lot of units to those particular categories, which we know we are in critical need of. And this is a great way to be able to do that. For me, if we have to increase the height, that's fine. I'm all for that. I just would like to see a much greater affordable units being allocated. I don't feel that 14 is enough. I want to see more because I know that the need of this community is for a lot more. You know, we're hearing the amounts of rents and people saying that they're moving out because the cost for a one bedroom is just too high. So there definitely is a need for us to have that. And I think it's a great opportunity to voice that. For this project, I do have to echo the need for connectivity for a more walkable project. One of the speakers, the in-person speakers previously mentioned this, you know, connecting this development to the street and making sure that, you know, the residents feel as part of the community and not just building these walls or fences that really, you know, don't allow them access. I think that's really important. And one thing that I haven't heard mentioned, or maybe I would like to hear a little bit more about, is in the rendering that I saw, it was cars and some people walking, but I think we're really missing the mark because this development is really close to the Metrolink station. It's like a 1.2 miles away from the Metrolink station. And I think that it's a really big opportunity when we're talking about, you know, the issues of parking, and which are definitely concerns, you know, to help the developer or the developer themselves. But we really need to maybe this is for planning commission, if we're building these type of developments, with high density,
Rebecca,
know-
can we ask you to respectfully wrap it up? You're over your time.
yes, just maybe, what is the plan for public transportation in these areas? I know the lofts are going up across the street. I just would like to see more information, hear more information about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Stephen Gall, you are unmuted.
No comments.
Thank you.
Tammy Friedrich, you are unmuted.
Tammy? Should we move on?
Circling back to Darlene, you are unmuted.
Darlene?
No comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Darlene.
And finally, circling back to JP, you are unmuted.
No comment.
Thank you, JP. No other Zoom requests, hands raised? Are there
There
any?
is one hand raised for Roop Man. Roop Man, you are unmuted.
Hi, I spoke earlier. I don't think you guys could hear me, so I was wondering if I could just wrap up my thoughts really quick.
We'll
I'm
give
not
you
sure how much you guys heard.
30 seconds, please. Go ahead.
Oh no, it's still cutting out for me, but I'm gonna try my best. I'm a part of Neighborhood Council 1, and we spoke at length about this project, and how it'll add a lot of value to the city and also to that area. It'll just spruce up the look of that plaza, as well as provide a lot of much needed housing. We did pass our motion on the condition of considering more affordable units, and I would just like to echo what it seems like the majority of people are saying tonight is that it would be fantastic to get more affordable units up to 30% possible. It's a much thing in the city to have special like myself who are younger and trying to move out of their parents' house. Yeah, thank you so much for hearing me again.
Thank you, Ms. Mann. There's no
We have no
others.
more speakers at this time.
Thank you very much. So, are there any comments from staff regarding the statements that were made during the public hearing?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman? Do you suppose we could take a 5-minute break?
Before we do a staff comments?
Sure.
You bet. We'll take a break for 5 minutes. Let's make it 10. Thank you.
Let's just bring a flatbed in just in case.
We are 10 minutes after the hour. Let's take our spots, folks.
You don't want to hear more Marcosco story, did you? I raided a candy dish. That's all they have. So hopefully you like Three Musketeers. If not, oh well.
Thank you so much. I do, and I don't want to know where the
We are about to get started again, please. Thank you very much. We are at the point where we have just finished public comments. Are there any comments from staff regarding statements made during the public hearing?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson Tolson. There was a couple of questions that were brought up during the hearing, the public comments. One, if there's going to be walkways that connect the whole shopping center so residents can go to the different stores. And yes, the site plan does show different walking paths, so there should be no problem on that. There was a comment asking about the enclosed patios on the first floor to be made open. There's a requirement for private open space, so that's why they're enclosed and they should remain that way. In regards to the height of the building next to the single-story duplexes on Workman Avenue, being that this project's already zoned mixed use and part of the Tapo district, they're allowed to have 55 feet maximum height. And 3 stories, in this case, the incentive they're requesting is the 4-story. Nevertheless, they're staying within the height. So regardless, whether it's this project or the next project, there's still going to be the possibility of having a building that is 55 feet high. And in regards to the concern from Commissioner Hodge on the 37 parking spaces that are short, one idea the staff has, potentially, maybe they can become parallel parking spaces. In that way, they're not, they still provide some additional parking spaces, but they're not conflicted by the size because they can be 12 by 22 feet and they can go along the wall. So that's one possibility that maybe the commission wants to consider. And in regards to the affordability, providing more affordable units, that one I will let the applicant answer to that because that's we didn't discuss with the applicant. And also, I just wanted to let you know that the applicant provided me with the one rendering that they wanted to show on the east elevation that we didn't have before. So maybe when it's time for the applicant's rebuttal, that we can address that. And one last comment regarding the density concern, we can actually write a condition where we put the density that is required for these PDs, and that way future projects take into consideration what we're doing here. And like we mentioned before, we can also add a condition regarding working on the east side of the building architecture, should the commission decide to do so after you review the additional renderings that the applicant will provide. And those are the comments that I have, unless Mr. Gibson, you have anything to add?
I'll follow up on that. And Ms. Pedroso, I believe there is in response, a condition regarding the palm trees to be changed out along Tapo Street. And if you can
yes,
also show the landscaping along the alleyway to show where that's located in relation to the block wall for screening or buffering purposes. And perhaps in the applicant's rebuttal, he might be able to clarify bicycle parking for regular customers, we do have a municipal code for bicycle parking for the center, which will be continued to be required regardless of the mixed-use project.
Yes, and actually, as a matter of fact, on the palm trees, there is a condition from Public Works Maintenance Department requiring for some of those palm trees to be taken out for the same reason of the not providing enough shade.
Commissioner Gray, can you see these slides?
I can see the slides, but there's two. So before you clicked on one, there's a side panel that's got some notations on it. That's much better. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think I'm, again, sharing the wrong screen, but as long as you can see the drawing, hopefully you can actually see it. We're not seeing it on here, so hold on a second. Just give me 1 second. And I have to do the share. Almost there. Now I don't know where.
While we're waiting, Mr. Young, can you maybe address the appliances, electric, gas, and what have you also?
I think
Not yet.
So just, now can everybody see in the screen? Do I have it on the right location?
Commissioner Gray, can you see this?
I can see it says site plan and it's got the blue arrows. So yes.
Perfect.
If that's the slide that she's on, I can see it.
Thank you.
Thank
See
you.
my mouse moving. Perfect. Sorry about that.
Great.
So I know this rendering shows the palm trees, but this rendering was kind of done early on in the process of the building design. And so right now, between the building and this wall over here, there's about 10 feet of landscaping, and they're proposing to plant trees to help screen some of these buildings over here. However, there's not any landscaping right against the wall. But the trees are next to the building. And what was the third item that, Mr. Gibson, you wanted me to show?
Yeah, it was the palm trees and the buffer along the alleyway. I believe the tree buffer is set in from the alleyway about 10 feet. The alley will remain, is that correct?
Yeah, so basically you have the alley width, and then you had the property line wall. Maybe I'll show it on a plan so it would be a little bit easier to show. So you have the service alleyway over here, which is about 34 feet, and then from this fence over here to the building is another 10 feet. So this is the area that's going to have the landscaping. So the total area between here and here is more about 44 feet. And this is from the edge of the property line of the whole project.
Okay, and I believe there's also a question, maybe the applicant could respond in his rebuttal if the public can access the shopping center through the parking garage to pass through for pedestrian access or vehicular access.
So there is walkways that connect through here, and also the walkway that connects through the perimeter. So they don't necessarily have to walk on the driveway to get to those places, and maybe the applicant can explain that a little bit better when they do the rebuttal. Maybe this is a better way of showing the sidewalk that connects, and then there's another sidewalk over here.
Anything else from staff?
I think regarding the affordable housing comments that came up, this is an applicant-driven process, and the city and state provides incentives to provide affordable housing. So this is what the applicant presented. They may be able to, further explain how they came up with the 14 if they desire.
Thank you very much. Would the applicant like to respond to any of the comments regarding statements made during the public hearing? Mr. Young-Gooden, you got the floor.
Yes, please.
If you give me 1 second, I will load up the one rendering you want.
Whenever you're ready, we can get to that one. There's a lot to respond to. I think first and foremost, it's great to see the level of participation we have tonight from the community, both those who attended in person and those who attended virtual. So thank you all for participating tonight and sharing your feedback. I made notes on a lot of these comments, so I'll kind of just go down the list. Anything I don't address, please ask me. Early comment was in regards to traffic at the center, and with the redeveloped property, will traffic increase? And the answer is no. Traffic actually is reduced with the addition of the residential element. So the number of trips will decrease by adding residential and eliminating 60,000 square feet of retail. So the offset is actually a positive for traffic impact. For bike parking, we'll absolutely include bike parking to meet code and beyond to provide a functioning, well-run mixed-use project. We wholeheartedly agree that multimodal transportation is important, and providing the resources to encourage more pedestrian and bike mobility is important to us. So there will be bike parking available for guests, residents, visitors, shoppers, everybody. There's a good question on water. I appreciate that question. So we have a will serve letter from Golden State Water saying that they will service and do have enough resources to allow for this project or to provide for this project. There was a question on the market vacancy rate early on. So the vacancy rate is 2.8%. It's extremely low. Ms. Pedroso, I believe, addressed security issues with the private balconies. I will just comment that the interior of the building is fully secure, so all residents who need to or who access the building will do so through a controlled access point with a key fob. So only residents will have access to the interior spaces of the mixed-use building. A question about the appliances, gas or electric. The project, it can be fully electric. So when we get to that phase of the design, that'll be a consideration, but it can be fully electric. Connectivity. Are you ready to share that slide? Oh, sorry, I meant the. You know what? Let's hold off on that one. In regards to connectivity, the parking structure does have unobstructed vehicular access through there, so it's not gated. So somebody coming to and from Cochrane can directly access the retail portion of the center. In regards to pedestrian access, we have direct access from the units to the ground floor level, and we will include crosswalks or a striped crossing between the proposed park and the sidewalk in front of the retail space. Okay, I think that addresses most of the comments we heard. And then if we want to elaborate further on the architecture on the east side of the building, I'll invite Kevin Newman up here to describe this visual Ms. Pedroso is going to share.
Thank you, Colby. Let's wait till we get the picture up there, make sure that Commissioner Gray can see that.
It was up.
There. Can you see that, Commissioner Gray?
Yes, I can.
Mr. Newman?
Thank you. So this is a great view that shows the north and the east side, and the articulation probably is better pronounced. As you can see on the north side, what I talked about earlier, where the beige part of the building structure and the white, that there's a 10-foot separation along the second floor and the third floor. And that allowed us to really create more relief along the north, as well as implementing the color blocking to help accentuate that separation of planes. As we wrap around to the corner on the east side, and again, you'll start to see that there's the same distance of separation between the beige part of the facade and the white building facade behind it. So it steps back about 10 feet, and then you'll also see that the upper floor units that are on the corner, those step back an additional 10 feet as well, so that entire area pulls back. And it's very difficult to see that in the 2D views that we had, but this allows you to see what a greater portion of the entire facade along the east dictates. So we're promoting difference in massing change, in horizontal and vertical integration of the buildings. And I think that from that standpoint, one thing I'll also add is our prior design did not include tile roofs on that facade, nor did it include it on the north side. The only area we had it was on the corner unit that you see there. That's a lower profile building. Those horizontal roofs that you see on the north and on the east side were added as we modified the building elevations per our discussions with planning. So hopefully that responds to the question.
Thank you, Mr. Newman.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we close the public testimony portion of the hearing?
Yeah, I have a question. It's just clarification.
Please.
On this particular image, it's showing on the east end, it's got balconies, but that's no longer the case, correct? So we're using this just as the alleyway, which you can kind of see there's an alleyway between the wall and then the trees that are going to be another 10 feet from the alleyway to the building. But those balconies, isn't that what they had said is no longer facing the alley? Is that correct?
These balconies are facing the alleyway. The ones are they remove, maybe on the following page, maybe below. This area are the balconies that they remove. These ones are stay. But the comment that staff had, it was besides the articulation of the building, as shown on the Tapo Street elevation, there's a lot more movement with more materials with trellises and different items and archways and so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no further questions, we will close the.
I'm sorry, one more question. He made it, so one of them, I'm so sorry, I do not remember which one of the presenters had said this, but they had said that when it came to the appliances, that they can be fully electric. Does that mean that there is gas, but you can opt into just electric?
Mr. Young.
The project is not fully designed to that level of detail with gas and electric. I'm saying that the project can be designed to be fully electric for all appliances, if that's the direction that we choose or we go.
Sounds like we might hear something about that. Thank you.
Yeah, as somebody that likes to cook, I'm really into my gas cooking, but that's just me. Thank you.
Fantastic. If there's no further questions, we'll close the public testimony portion of the hearing. Now it's time for the comments and questions from the Planning Commission's comments. We've got Commissioner Hodge.
Yes, this is, I have a question for Ms. Pedroso. You were mentioning something earlier about tying the two parcels together, 2 and 3, so that they could address issues with respect to density in the future. Could you, I had a difficult time understanding you probably because of your mask. If I could just ask you to articulate that again.
Yes, what I said was that we could definitely add a condition on this development permit now that talks about the density. So in the future, if parcel 3 goes through another project that is taking into consideration the density that was given into this project. So in that way, they can be connected, and there's a checks and means, so we can make sure that we don't miss that part of the project. Unless Mr. Gibson wants to clarify that item.
So clearly that language isn't going to be put before us tonight, and that's fine with me. I want you to take whatever time is necessary and work with the applicant to make sure that it gets done correctly. But if we were to move forward with and just refer to it as amended, you would understand and move forward with that deliverable before it goes to the city council, correct?
That is correct.
We're okay with that legally? You want to comment on that?
Yes. It depends on the direction from the Planning Commission, but there's been a discussion of a number of additional conditions of approval, one of which is considering the combined density of parcels 2 and 3. Another one is a condition of approval about sort of 360 design elements and articulation that was discussed in the staff report. So those are 2 additional conditions of approval that the Planning Commission has discussed and could include with its motion.
And Ms. Pedrosa also talked something about, and I didn't hear the word that you used with respect to the parking spaces that we talked about earlier. You said it could be what?
Parallel.
Yeah,
parking spaces. So instead of perpendicular, you park against the wall. In that way, you don't lose all the parking spaces.
Sure. Yeah, and I've seen that work. And actually, in the building I used to work in, I had that to great success. Do we have motorcycle parking?
I believe there's some. Yes, there's some. I don't have the quantity on my head, but yes, there are.
I'm curious if that could be if that would actually provide more spaces for motorcycles. I'm good with either way, so long as we get to the position where we don't necessarily need the waiver, and we could push forward without any kind of concern with respect to that.
So if I understand correctly, you prefer not to, in lieu of agreeing to the waiver of the reduced parking spaces, to come up with a combination of elimination of parking spaces or parallel parking spaces or motorcycle spaces?
I'd prefer to utilize the space for the benefit of the residents that are going to live there, the tenants that are going to live there. And I think it's important to be efficient. But I'd also like to see, that it's done in such a way that we don't necessarily have to grant the waiver under the circumstances for which they were proposed. So if, either parallel or for motorcycle, something like that, that would be great. And that would be a real nice solution for me.
Yeah, motorcycles are going to take about 8.5 feet and compared to the 15.
Okay. So yeah, I think that's wonderful. And by the way, well, I'll save that for later. And those are my questions. Thank you.
If I may, if there's discussion about changing the waiver, and that's the direction the Planning Commission wants to go, I'd recommend reopening the public hearing to see if the applicant would agree to the reconfigured parking.
Let's move forward, and then when we get to that position, if we need to discuss that and that's our consideration, then we'll do that. Other commissioners?
Yeah, I am still on the issue of some of the affordable housing. I'm looking at some of the comments that were made that the rents are like $2,500. And if I'm looking at very low income, you're talking that's $2,500 a month times 12. That's on an average basis. That's $14.42 dollars an hour that somebody is paying for rent, which is 73, almost 74% of somebody making very low income. And yet, even if it's low income, sitting at $31 an hour, somebody that's making $62,000 a year at because you're talking studio or a 1-bedroom, they're paying 45.92% in rent. And I just think that we should be, if if the comments are being made that the rents are going to be considered under market value anyway and affordable, then I think that we should be kind of saying then why aren't we making an applicant do more for those affordable housing issues? Make the commitment and say that they're going to be affordable. It doesn't need to be very low income, but even low income housing, and allowing so that in the future we have residents that can be ensured that not just 5% of the units, 14 units, but they're going to be more units that even at low income can afford to be able to rent.
Yeah, Commissioner Gray, the affordable housing component is primarily the purview of the City Council in terms of the consideration of number of very low-income units. Under this setup, it's kind of provided for informational purposes from the to the commission, but the affordable housing proposed affordable housing agreement with the fine-tuning of the affordability provisions would fall under the purview directly of the City Council. So I really don't know if there's much discretion the Planning Commission has as far as amending the terms of the proposed affordable agreement.
So there's nothing that we as the Planning Commission can be, it's that they're doing what they can and that we should be asking for more on the affordable housing?
You can make a recommendation, but I'll just leave it at that. You can make a recommendation, but the agreement itself and the final terms would be under the purview of the City Council.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice for us to make a recommendation to have more affordable housing. There's plenty of comments that were made tonight, even, and emails that were suggesting that, we've got RENA agreements that we need to be, and it seems like this is a perfect opportunity that we're looking at trying to make that corridor of Tapo Street, all the way from LA up to Alamo, where it's an opportunity to make this a living opportunity for people to not be so much into their cars, but to be able to walk and to make that revitalize portions of the city, but at the same time, make it such that people can actually afford to live where they work. And I think that it would be a great recommendation to make sure that we're following through on more affordable housing.
Right, and certainly you can make comments.
I'm not sure how to word, because I'm new at this still, and so it just seems as though there's been a lot of people asking for us to have more affordable housing, and we should be going and asking for that as a recommendation.
We can bring that up and as we're wrapping things up. Is there any other comments?
Great, thank you.
For you?
No.
Okay. Any other commissioners want to comment?
Okay, so I got a couple comments, but I'll make more later on. So I think we'd all like to see more affordable, but I think the developer has been generous with what he's given. Like you said, I don't think we can ask, but I have a firm belief that if you go to the well too many times, you're going to eventually come back with nothing. So he's agreed to the 5%, very generous. We can certainly ask for more, but I also think we run the risk of harming the 5% that we already have. So it's one of those things we can ask, but be careful what you ask for. The parking. My understanding is they already have excess parking. So they technically don't need a waiver for those spots because they don't need those spots to be considered in any way, shape, or form. So if they took away their waiver, could they still put those 37 spots in at the smaller amount, even though they're not required, or they just would stripe it out and zero parking spots are there?
We're in the comments as opposed to questions, I think.
Okay.
You want to help us with that part?
Because it's still for staff.
Certainly, I'll defer to development staff. However, my understanding is the size of the parking spaces that they're requesting doesn't meet the code standards, the current code standards. And so in order to put in those smaller spaces, they would need a waiver of the code standards.
That's
Is
why
that
it's
correct?
a waiver.
Okay.
Is that correct, Sean?
Yeah, the waiver request is for the smaller standard. If there were no waiver, then we cannot call them parking spaces, official parking spaces. So they'd never be on the plan as official parking. the area could remain unstriped, it could be motorcycle, it could be a number of things, but if they want it classified as legal parking spaces, they would have to request a waiver.
Okay, so even though they don't need the parking spaces, the mere fact that they've asked for them to be parking spaces, hence, that's why they're now being required for the waiver. If they took away the ask for the 37 spots to be there, they get rid of the waiver, then they can do whatever they want to do with that extra bit of concrete that we now call 37 parking spaces.
That's my take on it.
Okay. I'm not sure how big of a deal it is. Parallel spots, not a big fan of. They're a pain because you get people parked too close, too far, you can get potentially hemmed in. Motorcycle spots, I would hate to give up parking spaces even though they're shorter than that, because I'm not sure how many people drive motorcycles. In theory, we could make them for more bicycles. How many people are going to take bicycles in there? Whether we reconvert that area to storage. Either way, it would be a change back to the developer. I'm not sure, again, what we can ask for, what we could ask for, what we need to ask for. I know parking is always a premium. So my comment just on the parking is, call it a waiver, don't call it a waiver. Let them build the 37 spots a little bit shorter. If we need to reconfigure the wording for the waiver or not, I think staff can handle that part. I have a few other comments that I'll make later on, but those are my first two big ones that I wanted to talk about. Rendering number 20 of the drawings, by the way, great renderings. They're nice size, you can actually read them. Clearly shows on the, what I call the south part of the east elevation, shows the step back. It shows the roof design coming up the 3, then back for the 4. So the rendering on drawing number 20, which is level 4 of the building plan, clearly shows the step. The drawing number 25, which breaks up the east elevation between the part that goes around the parking structure on the north side and the part that you guys have changed the orientation for the buildings to get rid of the balconies on what I'll call the south part of the east. That is the part that seems to be lacking, and again, we'll get into some more comments I have on that. But the renderings, you did a great job. So rendering 20 and 25 seem to give a good example of an overlay or overview of what we're talking about when we start talking about the east version or the east elevation plans. So that's it for me for now.
Chairman Tolson, would this be a good time to ask the applicant to address the questions that we were going to ask him to talk about a little earlier?
As it relates to
the parking,
affordable housing, and maybe a south portion of the
east
side of the building articulation.
Reopen.
Sure.
If I may, Chair David Caceres, City Attorney for the City of Simi Valley. I just want to let the Planning Commission know that what is a waiver has been pretty broadly construed, and so if there's a request for a deviation from a building standard, they can ask for a waiver. So I just want to make sure the Planning Commission was aware of that.
Thank you very much. So what we're going to do now is open up the public portion of the meeting and ask if, Mr. Young, you want to address those 3 areas that we've talked about.
Yes, thank you. Just to clearly respond to every topic, can you ask the question that I can respond to?
Additional affordable housing.
Well, we chose to include 5% very low income as an element to the project. We agreed that there's a need, and that's why we elected to do so. But my response would be we're happy to open the conversation with the city to participate financially to include more affordable housing if that is your wishes.
Okay. The parking as it relates to the waiver number 5, the 37 parking spots that are not compact.
I would request to work with staff to solve that issue and address that waiver. Come back to the next meeting with a solution.
So what we're hoping to do potentially would be to come up with a solution and then push it forward to the city council, or we can continue it. Those are kind of the options for tonight.
Sorry, continue the topic or the meeting?
The meeting.
Oh.
Am I right?
Actually, I was thinking that if Mr. Young was, and if the applicant was willing to work with staff to address that specific issue, and we could make it known to the city council what our thoughts were and what those questions and issues are, that it would be probably more productive to push it forward to the city council as opposed to continuing this meeting and delaying the project. So I would think that it would be more efficient to do it that way.
Okay,
Agree.
perfect. And then as it relates to the southern portion of the east side of the building, where it's basically plain Jane, all white, maybe adding some articulation.
I think you've already said that you'd be willing to work with staff on
We're
that.
willing to work with staff to add more architectural elements to improve the facade.
Okay. So what we're going to do now is close the public, I appreciate it, thank you very much.
Before we do, can I ask the
Yeah,
applicant one quick question? There was a gentleman who lives on Workman, and he was talking about hedges or something like that. I don't know where he lives on Workman, but I have a feeling you do. Would you be willing to work with him if nothing else, maybe if not a hedge, then maybe just the tree species? So maybe he's at least a little satisfied that the tree is going to be larger and provide more. Would you be willing to do that?
Absolutely, I'm happy to work with Mr. Dunchman.
That makes me happy. Thank you.
In a way that
I have a question as well, though, because we tend to put in those those Italian cypress, and they're very, very, very good at attracting things like rats and raccoons and spider webs, and they look really sometimes awful. Sorry for the Italian cypress fans out there, but I would like for us to get away from things that would necessarily attract rodents, considering that it is an alleyway, and there should be something that would be a little bit more attractive that maybe staff can also be participating in.
Absolutely, we would definitely.
I know they're really good hedges, but they're also
Right.
horrendous for rodents and
Sure,
pests.
I understand your concern, and we would absolutely include staff in our conversations and working out a solution and making sure that we provide a landscape plan that meets code and meets the needs of the neighbors and the city.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young. So now we're going to close the public testimony again and continue maybe some discussions amongst ourselves as commissioners. Sounds like the parking can be discussed and sorted out with the staff as it relates to the waiver. The affordable, increasing the affordable, I think is going to be maybe just a recommendation, not necessarily a mandate from us. And then I sound like we have the south portion of that building, work with staff to make sure that it's up to what we're looking for and the recommendations we're looking for.
And Chairman Tolson, we may need some more specifics on your recommendations regarding, one, what parking provision are you looking for? Are you looking for parallel, reduced, or just work it?
Well, my thought is that the applicant just advised what he was willing to do, and he's willing to, consider multiple opportunities for resolving the issue in such a way that the space can be used, and we won't necessarily have to have the waiver. So I would rather not bind them, or rather limit that analysis to what we might, on the fly suggest here, because there's at least two opportunities that have been floated, and I'd like to give the people who are having that discussion as much opportunity to come up with a solution as possible. I'd rather not say we want this. I'd rather say we want a resolution to the issue, because we think that it can be resolved, that it can be utilized as some form of parking without the need for the specific waiver, so that we can simply avoid that issue.
So work with staff to eliminate the waiver.
Work with staff to address the use of that space as it relates to parking, such that the waiver number 5 becomes unnecessary.
Can I ask specifics on this? Is that what is the what is wrong with having the waiver? I'm not understanding is that if they have a space, if they don't have the space to be able to do that, why? And that if we don't have an issue with having the additional 37, is it 37 parking spots? What's the issue with granting a waiver? I'm not understanding.
Well, the anxiety that I had was that in trying to be consistent for other developer applicants who are going to come before us inevitably in the near future and not even too distant future, that we have some consistency with respect to how those are applied. I think that there's at least sufficient question as to whether or not the basis upon which the waiver was requested is appropriate. To avoid even having to address that, the applicant has said that he would be willing to work with reconfiguration of that space. This way, we don't have to, in essence, create a mindset going forward with other applicants that you can, as to what the question of, I forgot, I don't have the page right in front of me, but the specific question of, what prevents the project in essence from being developed, which is the basis upon which they, it's necessary in order to build the project, which is the basis upon which they.
Is it the wording then? Is it the last sentence
yeah,
that says to meet the required 9-foot by 18-foot requirement would physically preclude the project as designed and proposed?
Precisely. So that was the basis upon which they requested the waiver, that it's would physically preclude the project from being designed as proposed. And I wonder about that. And to avoid that issue, to make it so that we don't have to have a right and wrong in that question, we can not have the question. The applicant is, I think, very generously said that he'd work with staff to try to come up with other alternatives so that there's an efficient use of the property without having to get into this question and face, whatever those ramifications might be. So thank you very much by the way, for being open-minded to do that. So it eliminates the issue, and I think that there's a real benefit to that. If we do as we had talked about, and the applicant indicated he was willing to do, and that's to work with staff specifically to come up with solutions that would allow that waiver to be withdrawn.
In light of what Attorney Caceres said, can you help us? Can we do that? Christine?
I think we would need more specific direction as to what the recommended solution is. Because at this point, it seems to me that it's pretty open-ended as to what the parking solution is.
Yeah, I think it is. And then the concept that I'm envisioning, and I am encouraging that we take, is what we talked about with the applicant. And that's specifically that the project move forward. If it's going to be the commission's recommendation to move the project on for approval by the city council. We're just making recommendations tonight. We're not approving it.
Correct.
So that we make recommendation that they work with, that they understand the concerns that would be in the staff report, that staff would work with the applicant between now and the time it goes to the city council to see if a solution can come forward. They may decide not to and put it before the city council. And I'm okay with that too, so long as the issue is brought up and dealt with. But I think the applicant's acting in good faith and willing to come up with a potential solution. And I think that we can, turn it over to staff, to make that recommendation before it goes to the city council.
Perfect.
So we could make that recommendation then to work with staff on the two issues that have been brought up then. And that would be the affordable housing element as well as the parking waiver.
That's if we decide to make that recommendation. But we have discussed so
I
far.
mean, that was my question.
And what
That was just a
appears
question.
what appears to be the consensus at this point is that staff is going to take a look at the conditioning parcel, creating a condition or language rather. I got up at 2:30 this morning, and I do apologize if I'm not speaking coherently. Come up with language that would tie parcel 2 and parcel 3 together for the purposes of density considerations for future development. To work with staff to come up with design elements on the southern portion of the east element of the project, to work with staff to consider the waiver request and other alternative solutions to utilize that space for the purposes of parking or for the benefit of the project and the tenants without having to proceed with the waiver request and the creation of spaces that are 3 feet shorter than currently required. And then the question for the commission is to whether or not to include a recommendation to City Council to request additional affordable housing. So that's the way I see where we are right now.
I think
Anybody
that
else?
tree selection would be the 6th one.
Oh, and tree selection. Yeah. And
Wait, I'm sorry,
agree.
tree selection would be what? Oh, the
The
sixth
next one.
item.
Yeah,
An additional-
I think that would be the 5th one, but I like
I was
that.
thinking you said the tree 6, and I'm like, I saw tree selections, but I didn't know that we were talking about a
Yeah,
specific
Cypress
tree.
would not be a
Sorry,
good
I just
idea.
misunderstood.
So my question is, again, assuming we all vote to move this forward to City Council, everything that Commissioner Hodge just talked about is purely for lack of a better term, a recommendation, but it's not a mandate. We are not conditioning our approval on removing the waiver 5. It's just merely keep it open for further discussion.
Correct.
There's no conditions that we're putting on our approval.
Correct.
Except for City Council and staff, for staff to work with the developer before it goes to City Council. If there's alternatives that can be made, consider them. But if not, it is as it is, and let the City Council have the final say.
Well, yeah, I mean, the considerations and thoughts of the commission would be included within the minutes.
Correct.
And within the staff report that goes to the City Council that, say, for example, they meet and they can't come up with language with respect to parcel 2 and parcel 3. The City Council would be advised of our recommendation that, that we recommended that something be done with respect to a condition in order to, with language rather, that would prevent the density issues that we addressed, and that would be addressed that would be included within the staff report, I assume. So I think staff's got it. I mean, based upon the statements made by Mr. Gibson and Ms. Pedroso, I think that they've got it wired, and that that if we decide to recommend approval of the project, it would be with recommendations as to those 4 or 5 things.
Got it. Thank you.
So then the last discussion item that we haven't got a consensus on is, do we want to recommend at least a discussion for them to consider increasing the affordable housing?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
We've had 2 people that said yes.
I'm not enthusiastic about it, and I'll say why. Always want to improve the amount of affordable housing, but for us to make a recommendation like that, I have to believe that one of the most difficult things that they did when they were working on bringing this project before us was working the numbers for the affordable housing element. And the affordable housing element, I mean, it's a big deal. It's why it goes to the city affordable housing subcommittee. Or is it a subcommittee? I think it is. And then to the City Council, because this isn't something that goes willy-nilly. I think that there's money involved from the government to the applicant, and there's all sorts of things. And my guess is a bunch of people have broken a lot of pencils doing all of this, and they've come up with 14 units of very affordable housing. I mean, very low income housing. And then for us to say, well, we think you should have more. Well, that's almost like saying, I wish the sun's out tomorrow, because, and I don't mean to be glib about it, and I'm certainly not trying to be. It's just, I mean, I think that if you ask for something, there should be some idea that it's lacking. And I don't know that the 14 units of very low income housing is demonstrates lacking. If there was none, I would definitely jump on it and say, yeah, we should get on it. But it seems sort of presumptuous for us, I think, to include that.
Vice Chairperson Rice.
I have to agree with Commissioner Hodge on this. I mean, I would love to see more low-income housing in the city. I'd love to see more very low-income housing in the city, but I don't think trying to get a developer this far into the process to change how they've penciled everything out, I don't think that's the right move to make at this point. So I agree with Commissioner Hodge.
And then for myself, I'm in favor of keeping the numbers the way they are because, they have studios. They've got 1 bedrooms. They've got 2 bedrooms. They're not doing 3 or 4 bedrooms in this project. And so I think they've crunched the numbers, and I want them to be successful in doing that as opposed to not successful. So I'm in favor of not adding that affordable housing to our recommendations, which I think is a consensus.
Okay, and that's fine. I'm just also letting you guys know at the same time, I am disappointed because I'm not asking for very low income. I'm asking for some low income based on from the comments that were made by an awful lot of people that this is something that, I believe even the applicant had said that he would consider discussing with the city. But at the same time, it's like I'm not in consensus also with the parking issue. I have no problem with the 15 feet parking and saying that to come back and say the same thing that, oh, we're not going to give him the waiver for this. I'm not in agreement because you don't like the wording. And I understand Commissioner Hodge that you stated that it was a financial, and the applicant made it very clear that it wasn't about a financial issue. So I'm in favor with also giving them the waiver for the parking. And I don't think that we should be putting these restrictions back on the candidate as well, or the applicant. I believe that the east side, that they could work on some of the architectural elements, but at the same time, they do also have the levels that they've been put into place. I think that they could add some additional things. I think it could be a recommendation, but I'm not willing to vote against giving them waivers for those things.
So the design elements on the east side is not a condition of a waiver. It's just a discussion item that we've.
That's just a recommendation, right, to talk about with the city, but I'm okay with their waiver for parking.
The way I understand that, we're not conditioning.
Correct.
We're
there's
not
no
conditioning
conditions.
approval on anything.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, and it's not because we haven't done that in the future, or in the past rather, conditioned recommendations based upon A, B, and C. This is a different project because there is the affordable element to it, and you have the government code that specifies certain things that we're not jumping against. And this whole concept about, and why I'm so concerned about number 5 is, we'll remember the Alamo project, and I don't want to get involved in it because I don't know, what the issues are with that particular project at this point. I don't know what the standards are, but you'll remember that I had some concerns about whether or not that the developer could reduce the size of each of the rooms ever so slightly. It was an inch, and then we would be able to have our side yard setback on Tapo Street. On Tapo Street. And the whole concept was whether or not they could get the project done or not, depending upon providing the waiver. It was impossible to build without the waiver. And my argument was, no, you could actually do something different.
This is a separate project. This isn't that same project.
It's not. Commissioner Gray, if you give me a moment, I'll get to it. But what I'm saying is that I'd like to see to it as much as possible that we objectify this kind of material, that there's some specifics where we can actually look at it, so that in the future, when another applicant comes to us, we can say, wait a minute, this doesn't need to be done in order, as their application says, that not being able to do it would physically preclude the project. I mean, we may want to be able to say that this applicant in the future has a waiver, and we'll look at it and say, no, you can still get it done without the waiver. So this is the argument I'm making in terms of being consistent. So
And I don't agree with you on it, that's all.
I'm sorry?
That's fine, that's your argument, I just don't agree with you.
Okay.
That's all.
That's why there's 5 of us. So what we're going to do is, I think we know the direction we're going, and I'm going to ask, may I please have a reading of the resolution, and hopefully.
And Chairman Tolson, before we read the resolution, the intent would be to, whichever recommendations / comments you come up with, is that we would, and our legal advisor, if we could just confirm this, we would just amend the resolution to include those comments, not as conditions, but as the whereases would be amended, that the Planning Commission recommends the changes that they decided upon.
Well, there's no changes technically.
The discussion items.
So as I understand it, there's a discussion of actually adding a condition of approval regarding the density calculation.
Yes.
So the intent would be to add that as a condition of approval to the resolution. That's item.
No.
No.
We don't want to add it as a condition of approval.
Well, actually,
Yes.
we were already advised by staff that it could be added as a condition.
And
And that's our recommendation. The city council could say, sorry, no. But as a recommendation, as a condition of our recommendation, staff has already told us that can be added as a condition. I'd like to go with that.
Okay, we could add that
Do
one
we
as
have a consensus on that?
I would like to actually hear more about that because we've heard different things so far, that it's acceptable, that the calculations were based on certain things. And I still haven't seen the calculations or understanding the calculations to be able to say that then it should be conditional of this. That something is changing from the beginning when we started talking about this until we're at this point now. So I would like to know whether or not the state does require for these things to change, or is it that the calculations are correct and it doesn't affect future? Because at this point, it seems as though this conversation is changing.
Christina, you want to help us here?
Certainly. So the density calculation is based, to my understanding, is based on both parcels 2 and 3, contiguous parcels as allowed by the state density law. The intent of this condition of approval would be to let future developers know when developing parcel 3 that future density calculations must also take into account a combined density of 2 and 3, so that we don't have a developer or a future applicant double dipping on density. So we want to be consistent in our in staff's calculations now and staff's calculations in the future.
Commissioner Gray, do you understand that?
I do, but I'm still getting is it in fact that it is conditional, or are we making it conditional for future developments? I just want to know what it means. Is that right now you're saying that parcel 2 and 3, you can take the parcel acreage for 2 and 3 to get the conditional density for parcel 2. But does that mean that then that needs to be reduced for parcel 3 in the future? Is that state law? That's what I want to know, because it's.
So the density is established by the municipal code and also state law.
Right.
So the future density calculations for parcel 3 will be based on the municipal code. Any density bonuses required by state law. But what we want to do is make sure that baseline density calculation from the municipal code includes both 2 and 3. And I apologize if I'm not being clear, and maybe Sean could jump in if.
So in other words, if a developer comes back and adds another wing to this project, another phase which hasn't been discussed, the condition merely is a reminder to staff, the owners, et cetera, as a recorded condition on the property that any additional development of this site will already account for the 20 units per acre we're providing here with these 280 units. And we won't forget that this 2 and 3 combination applied. So it's more of a reminder that.
Right, but isn't that only the 10 units, because we're at 42 with the conditional, and then we're at 52 instead of 42, but you're able to do that because state allows you to take parcel 2 and 3. You're just wanting to make sure that the future has to reduce that 10 units for parcel 3, correct?
Per acre, 10 units per acre.
Right, per acre. So it's just basically saying that you're putting this in some sort of a file for parcel 3 in the future.
Protecting the
Right.
citizens of Simi Valley.
Correct.
Yeah, like Christina said, we're not double dipping any municipal code or state law in this instance.
Right, and state and municipal codes allow for this to take place, or are we doing something to reduce state laws?
No,
and
we're not
municipal codes?
reducing state law. Or
Okay,
any
that's all I'm
density
asking. I'm
bonus
just asking
laws.
for clarification because it seems as though it was a little confusing, and I don't want this to be conditional of this project on if we're not completely clear on it. That's all.
I think we are.
I think we're clear
No,
on
we're
item
just,
number 1.
we're just conditioning the recommendation on that question.
Correct.
That's it. I mean, look, we could turn the thing down and it still goes to the city council and they look at it de novo. Our job today is to make recommendations. And so in essence, this is what we're doing. And that one, I think, rises rather to such an important issue that we should make it conditional. The other issues, work with the staff.
So in terms of reading we're about to read, we can add the condition of approval for the density calculation.
Right, that'll be PD condition star A26.
Got it.
You see that?
Did you say star A26?
Yes. That's a condition to the plan development permit. Staff would present a finalized wording for that to the city council. That's item number 1.
Okay.
Second item.
So let's have a reading with that additional item.
Just as amended.
Perfect.
Resolution number SVPC 01-2022. A resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Simi Valley recommending to the City Council approval of a Plan Development Permit, PDS 2021-0005, and tentative parcel map, TPS 2021-0001, to develop a 4-story mixed-use project consisting of 280 apartment units and 4,750 square feet of new commercial space within an existing shopping center, subdivision of the site into 3 parcels, and inclusion of affordable housing units, development concessions, and development waivers, and the project's mitigated negative declaration and its mitigation monitoring plan as amended.
Fantastic. The chair will now entertain a motion.
Move to adopt the resolution as read by staff.
Second.
Fantastic. We have a first by Chairman Hodge and a second by Chairman Mann. Can we call for a vote?
We got promoted.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Sorry. I can screw up.
Good job.
Commissioner Gray?
Yeah, I approve the project. I'm just.
Motion passes unanimously.
We have a thank you to Claudio, to Colby Young and your staff. All righty.
And we're clear on the other 4 recommendations, 4 comments.
Yes.
That's a staff question, because I think we are.
Okay. So that's the parking waiver issue, the tree type, the south portion of the east elevation.
That was it.
That was. I think that was it.
Yes, that was it. That was it.
City Council can work that out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, now we are going to move on to oral communications and reports. Does staff have anything to report?
Yes, Chairman Tolson, members of the Planning Commission. I just want to follow up with you. I did send emails to each one of you advising you of the upcoming League of California Cities Planning Commissioners Academy to be held in San Ramon, March 16th to 18th. I did not hear back from any of you, but if you would like to attend, we could potentially have up to 2 commissioners attend, and we need to get those reservations going. If no one wants to go, if you could please let me know so we could just move on, or not. 2 no's, 3 no's.
Only if you change the CBDG public hearing on the 16th. But if that's too much, then no, are they having a virtual, can we attend it virtually?
Not that I'm aware of. You could follow up with me offline.
Okay, perfect.
And Commissioner Gray.
Sean, is that the one that you sent me on the 14th? No, that's not it. I don't see where you sent me that. So sorry.
It was sent 2 days ago.
Yeah, it may have been on the 14th.
Conversations from Sean. Sorry, it went someplace else in my email. I'll get back to you on that if you don't mind. I think.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next Planning Commission meeting will probably be end of February. We're looking at February 23rd for possible agenda items on the 23rd. We will send out any cancellation notices for sure on the 9th at that time. That's all I have.
Do any commissioners have anything to report? Having heard none, the Mobile Home Rent Mediation Board, does staff have anything to report?
No additional items tonight.
Tree Advisory Board, does staff have anything to report?
No additional items.
Okay, this concludes the meeting of January 19th, 2022. The next scheduled meeting will be February 23rd, 2022. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.